The story begins on a bright sunset. Someone shouted to his opponent that he had worked hard to reach this place. It was a monster that assumed that its opponent had already managed to defeat many powerful enemies, thereby making its way over their corpses. He said this to the hero, to whom the monster expressed his praise right during their battle on behalf of the Demon King. He stretched out greatly and said that as a reward for the hero, he would kill him with his own hands. The hero gripped his weapon tightly and then exclaimed that he simply could not allow this to happen. He stated that what he had achieved with his friends was what made him continue to move forward along this thorny road. He raised his sword high and then shouted that it was the faith of his friends that gave him strength. The strength of his friendships was simply unshakable. The Demon King looked at them and then said that in that case they should watch him torture. He asked if the so-called power of friendship would work on him. The hero's face hardened. At the end of the fierce battle, the Demon King held one small body in his hand. Everything around him was destroyed. The hero lay unconscious in his hand, bleeding. The Demon King asked if this was what he was going to defeat him with. He said it was incredibly pathetic. Immediately after these words, he clenched his fist, destroying the hero into nothing. Drop by drop, the hero's blood fell to the ground. The Demon King raised his arms wide and declared that, in that case, they should continue their conquest. The hero's lifeless body lay nearby. After that, loud explosions and screams continued throughout the city for some time until it got dark outside. After a while, one of the monsters, in some panic, approached the Demon King and tried to tell him something. The Demon King looked at the monster and said that he was irritated by it. He asked the monster what had happened. In response, the monster told him that the hero had appeared in his lord's castle again. The Demon King calmly stated that if the monster was talking about that pathetic hero, he should know that he had already died a long time ago. Suddenly, something unusual caught his attention. He looked at the place where the hero's body had previously lain and noticed with horror that he had turned into a skeleton. He asked where the hero's armor had gone. Immediately after this question, someone called out to him from behind. It was the hero, who still confidently held his sword in his hands and said that this time he would definitely destroy the Demon King. The monster clenched his fist and said that he didn't know how the hero did it, but he didn't care how many more times that man came to him. He began to send hundreds of attacks at the hero, while simultaneously saying that it was reckless, futile, useless, meaningless, and worthless. He opened his mouth to attack and declared that he should build a tombstone to the end of despair just for this hero. Following these words, he directed a huge and powerful fire attack at him. As the huge cloud of smoke dissipated, the Demon King silently looked at it. Suddenly, a bright glow appeared in the previously empty space, after which a hero began to assemble from small pieces. The Demon King was amazed. The hero said that fortunately he had a resurrection talisman. He exclaimed to the Demon King that the real battle would only begin now. The Demon King was taken aback, thinking that such a thing was simply impossible. He asked how the hero could revive so easily. He exclaimed that even for him, the Demon King, it was not that easy. He did not understand at all what was going on in this world and where such incredible power could come from. The hero stated that his resurrection had not even begun yet. He asked if the Demon King did not know about this. He exclaimed that the Demon King's subordinates had also felt this. He said that this was the result of the Demon King always looking down on them and never paying them enough attention. The monster was shocked. The hero said he never looked down on his subordinates, and that bond showed up in other ways. The Demon King was stunned, thinking that the hero's words and arguments made sense. The revival happened before the bonds began to work. He clenched his fist and said he didn't care. He charged at the hero again and exclaimed that he had to kill him before his heart was destroyed. They met again in the fierce battle that lasted for quite a long time. After some time, the Demon King was very exhausted. He was in the thick of blood and breathing heavily. He stood in front of the hero and asked how long he planned to be reborn. Bleeding, he said that he could not think of anything, except that it was a nightmare. At this time, the hero slowly walked towards him. The Demon King said how irrational this hero is to exist. The boy was standing right next to him when the words that this was the end for the Demon King came out of his mouth. The monster didn't have time to do anything, when suddenly the hero's sword turned out to be too fast and sharp. In the blink of an eye, the monster's body was torn into 2 pieces. The monster pushed off the ground and tried to escape, but the hero quickly found himself above it, with a cruel expression on his face. He began to strike at the Demon King until there was nothing left of him but a pile of bones and flesh. The Demon King tried to do something. He tried to stand up, but he couldn't do that properly. He said that it was not time for him to die, especially in a place like this. He tried to say that he was not going to give up. At that moment, the hero stood up in front of him. Without a trace of regret in his eyes, he destroyed the Demon King. On this day, the war ended. Much time had passed since then. The hero returned to the royal capital, and killing the Demon King was a great achievement that would be talked about for eternity. This was supposed to be the end, but someone stood up and exclaimed that this was not the end of this story. The monster rose from a small coffin and said that if he had not imprisoned his soul in this isolated vessel, he would have been destroyed along with his body. He stood up quietly and said that he had to look into the situation anyway. He noticed that all the things and money he had saved were gone. He assumed that using a temporary body would lead to something like this. He thought that first of all, he should have a snack. Suddenly, he noticed that his soul began to leak out, but he quickly caught it and returned it back to his body. He screamed loudly, saying that his soul had just almost flown away. He was in real horror. Suddenly, he heard some strange sound and began to look around for its source. He turned towards the small bushes and asked who was there. Suddenly, a slime crawled out from a small shelter. The monster sighed calmly and said that it was just a slug, which was the weakest creature. Hearing this, the little slug became very angry and made a noise. The monster cried out in slime for him to listen to him, after which he declared that he was the Lord of Lords who ruled over demons. He said that he was the King of Kings, the Demon King, Ignis. Hearing this, the little slime only launched a weak attack at Ignis with resentment. Noticing the unheard-of insolence, he became very angry and asked if this slime was really mocking him. He declared that this weak creature should see his full power. The monster created a huge magic circle and exclaimed that the slime should face his ancient magic. He was ready to create fire from the origins of the universe. But in place of his magic circle, only a tiny flame appeared. He got nervous and said that these were just flames, and this was only the beginning. Ignis said that this was a very mystical phenomenon of great magic, so the slime should go back. He got angry and decided that in that case, he would beat the monster to death. He called the slime to watch, because he was going to use his second form. Despite his expectations, its form was not terrifying or frightening, which caused even the slime to laugh at nothing more. Ignis looked at him and wondered if he was really going to do all this for a slug. He calmed down and thought that this little thing didn't deserve even a bit of his attention. Ignis thought that in the past he was truly the strongest warrior, and he could turn anyone into a simple pawn if he wanted to. He thought that after all, it was just a trivial fight. He picked up the slug and thought that if he could rely on calculations, if he could survive today, then everything would be all right tomorrow. He thought about the demons. Ignis silently looked at the slime, which sat obediently in his hands for a while, then lost his patience and hit the monster in the face. Ignis was stunned and flew backwards, landing on his back and hitting his head. He sighed loudly and slowly stood up. He began to shake and wondered why he was even doing such stupid things. He exclaimed that he was the leader who controlled evil. He was the Demon King Ignis after all. He only thought that in the past he had destroyed many countries, and also seized everything he wanted. In the past he had committed absolute atrocities. This is exactly what is expected of the Demon King, but at the same time, he's currently unable to defeat even a single slime. Due to the recognition of his weakness and pity, he was shaking. Seeing this, the slime may have felt some pity. It slowly walked towards the Demon King, then jumped onto his shoulder and connected with him. Ignis was taken aback and noticed that he could now hear the slime's thoughts. The little monster said that Ignis was incredibly brave to have the audacity to call himself the Demon King. He stated that he had no hatred for guys like him who actually had the guts to do it. Ignis got angry and said that it wasn't like that. He stated that he was not the one who was going to turn in the Demon King or anything like that. Suddenly, he stopped for a moment. Slime said that he understood this, and if Ignis did not believe in his own strength, then he would clearly not be worthy of being called the Demon King. He said that he only assumed this because he too was born a monster. He also said that this is the reason why he wants to become more than he is now. He only lived this long because of his belief in this, but he also advised Ignis not to worry about it so much. Slime suggested that Ignis was truly destined to rule the country, to which the Demon King exclaimed that this was the reason he had already been the Demon King once. Suddenly, the slime said that after they exchanged blows, they became close friends. Astonished by such a rapid development of events, Ignis asked what kind of nonsense his interlocutor was saying. Slime said that in honor of this, he could tell Ignis something interesting. Hearing this, the Demon King became interested. Slime said that this was the reason why he had such a gloomy look. He said that the river that was under Ignis's feet was called the Veil of Fire. It was a magical river that only glowed at night, and therefore, if he lacked mana, he should use this river. Hearing this, Ignis slowly descended into the water and then began to laugh loudly. He noticed that it was indeed low mana. Unfortunately, Ignis noted that something like that wouldn't be enough for him, and there wouldn't be enough mana nearby to fully restore him. However, this thought could mark his first day. It was the day of the Demon King's revival. Immediately after that, he turned to the slime and said that he, a scoundrel, would be the Demon King's first servant. He extended his hand to him and said that he allowed the slime to be his follower. After the slime climbed onto Ignis's hand, he decided to set off. He took the slime onto his shoulder and then exclaimed that his journey to conquer the world would begin again from this very moment. Someone was running through the forest, trying to catch up with one monster, who was fighting for his life during this escape. Ignis screamed loudly as he tried to escape from the people who were going to kill him, while the slime on his back swayed back and forth. He scolded himself heavily for allowing himself to make such a gross mistake, because he really should have thought about the fact that there might be monster hunters in such a place. Seeing the Demon King, they came up and said that they should kill this monster. Ignis thought that these people were so calm that it even caused him some fear. Slime said that considering that Ignis even moves with the help of mana, even running for him becomes a matter of his life and death. He said it wouldn't start. Still running as fast as he could, Ignis shouted to his comrade to finally shut up. Ignis kept thinking about his mana, because at this rate, he might not last even an hour. If things were to get worse, then he would have no other choice. He stopped abruptly, then spun his weapon around, causing chaos. He shouted at his pursuers not to underestimate him. He stated that even though he was weak, he was still the Demon King. There was no way Ignis was going to lose to such mere humans. After he drew his weapon, he declared that these people should feel his chaos magic. He called upon the spell of eternity. The amazed people shouted about the whistle, after which a small thing appeared in front of them, which completely absorbed all of Ignis's spell. Noticing this, the Demon King lost all confidence and dropped his weapon. The humans exclaimed that they hadn't even felt Ignis use his mana. They didn't understand what had happened. This hurt Ignis's pride, and he shouted that humans were nothing but cowards. He stated that it was so, even though he was using such a small amount of mana. Hearing this, the people became angry and took up arms against Ignis. One of them walked straight towards him with a cruel expression. But the slime reacted faster. It jumped off Ignis's shoulder and climbed right into the man's mouth. The man coughed loudly, then fell to the ground. His head turned sharply, then exploded. The people panicked. They told them not to let the slime into their bodies, but it was all in vain. Ignis watched this silently, in true shock. After all the humans were killed, Ignis asked if that was too harsh. He was truly dumbfounded by what he had just seen. He repeated this, saying that the Demon King was dumbfounded. The slime approached Ignis, causing the Demon King to scream loudly, saying that his comrade looked even more unpleasant while he was digesting food. He turned away and said that it was better for him not to bother him at this time. Suddenly, the slime handed Ignis something. The monster was surprised and asked if his comrade really wanted him to eat. He said it was for food, of course, but he didn't understand if it was his responsibility. Slime said they didn't just kill, because they weren't people. He explained that when they kill, they also eat. It is their pride, the pride of demons. After a while, Ignis was sitting on the ground, and next to him lay a pile of gnawed bones. He sighed and said that although, like mana, it was quite small, he believed it was good as a food supplement. After that, he said that to think that the number one subordinate would be so active, he noticed that the slime was surprisingly very reliable. In response, he said that this showed that Ignis was too weak. The Demon King yelled at his comrade to shut up. He said that the slime simply did not know his true strength. and if he saw his true form, he would be shocked. He's completely insane. Ignis sat down and said that the problem was that if this kept happening, he would be sent to the grave immediately. He wondered how to deal with this. Slime asked if Ignis could just disguise himself as a human. Ignis laughed and said that now that he had their flesh and blood in him, it would be too easy, because victory was there. You could eat it. He asked the slime if it was listening to him, and then ordered it to watch carefully. In the blink of an eye, a cloud of dust formed around him, and he himself turned into a man. He laughed and said that it was very elegant and his dignity as a demon king was just showing through. Slime said that if Ignis was going to disguise himself, he shouldn't pretend to be the demon king, because he doesn't want to fail. Ignis exclaimed that it was just a test. In his memories, people looked different. After that, he reincarnated again. A girl appeared before him. Slime asked what kind of armor it was because she looked extremely indecent from head to toe. Ignis asked if all women were like this. The slime said they should move on to the next one. He changed his appearance over and over again, but the slime kept saying it didn't fit some criteria. Now angry, Ignis took the form of a child and asked how about it. Slime said that he barely got it. Then he said that the outfit would be next. He thought that walking around with rags would be nice. Ignis changed his clothes and asked if this was better. Slime said that it should be accompanied by a tragic story about his family being eaten by demons or something. Suddenly, Ignis noticed that a carriage had pulled up to them while they were talking. He had never thought he would be so lucky. He said that it was wonderful and asked if they should contact them. Ignis finished his preparations. Slime asked if Ignis could do something like what he did before. He went down and decided to ask people. Ignis became unhappy and said that he had escaped from the forest. With tears in his eyes, he said that his parents had been eaten. He thought he was a great actor. At the same time, he asked his older brothers for help. He asked them to take him to the nearest town. The man put his hands on Ignis's shoulders and said that it was a child, and they should take him. The other suggested that they could sell him for some small change. Ignis ran away from there, shocked, thinking that this was never going to be as planned. He noticed that they were being followed because of this view. He decided to transform. Ignis asked how they could do that, since they no longer had a reason to catch him. He told them to leave. Noticing that he was a demon, they decided to hunt him, as it would bring even more money than a child. Ignis exclaimed that this world was corrupted. They decided to catch the slime on the monster's head first. They caught it in a net, causing Ignis to stop and ask his comrade if he was okay. He was going to save him. Suddenly, one of the men hit Ignis hard, causing him to fall to the ground. The man said that he was going to cut him into pieces and sell him. Ignis panicked and told him to wait, because for him, the Demon King, it was impossible to die in a place like this. Suddenly, someone hit the man with all his might, after which he went flying. The stranger came out and asked who these pathetic people were that were appearing everywhere. Ignis said he doubted it was time to go hunting. He was almost certain that this was their origin, as they were the most corrupted of the elves. They had green skin, a muscular body, heroic fangs, and were one of the most well-known types among demons. He asked the monster if he was an orc. The orc smashed the man's head and asked Ignis if he'd been attacked by humans too. The Demon King asked if the orc had been attacked too. The monster said that it was so, and unfortunately, with their time, such people are becoming more and more. This place cannot be called safe for monsters. He asked if Ignis wanted to go with him to his village. He called him a knuckle. Ignis asked if the orc knew who he was. He said he was the evil of evil, the king of demons. The orc said that it was natural for every male demon to want to become a demon king, but it wasn't enough just to want to, so Ignis shouldn't dwell on it. He said that he understood how he felt. Ignis was shocked, because no one believed him. He didn't understand why this was happening. Slime said that Ignis didn't make the first impression that a demon king should make. Ignis needed to be more confident. He asked how Ignis hadn't figured it out himself. The king was angry. He told the orc that it turned out that even deep in the mountains there were monster villages. He asked if the monster was something like an orc. The monster was surprised and said that he was Highland. Ignis was surprised. Highland asked if the monster didn't even know the types of orcs. He said that if the body was green like his, then it was Highland. They mostly live in mountainous areas, and because of their large numbers, orcs live everywhere. They are similar to them. Highland noticed that the slime immediately understood what kind of orc he was. Ignis thought about it. Orcs with pale skin and a ferocious character are Verhained, and those with stone skin are Gruben. There are many more types of orcs in the world, but these are the most common. He said they had already arrived. This was their village. There were many different orcs around. Ignis thought that everything in this village was too primitive. Suddenly, one of the orcs asked who their friend had brought. The orc calmly explained that it was a knuckle who wanted to become the Demon King. Ignis exclaimed that he was the Demon King. The orcs explained that he must have good ambitions, and becoming the Demon King is not a bad dream. The main thing is not to lose heart. They all shouted at Ignis not to lose heart and not to give up because they believed that he would succeed. However, they said that he was still far from the previous Demon King, so he shouldn't focus so much on his dream. He thought that everyone said that and he lacked anger, so he couldn't be called the Demon King among demons. The orcs added that he had lost to the hero in the end anyway. These words hurt Ignis. They said that because he wanted to win the war at any cost, all the youth went to war, and in the end, they all died. He always said that force could achieve anything, but when he lost to a stronger man, they began to doubt him. He always commanded them, but did not rule, and they were finally free. Ignis exclaimed that they knew too much for orcs. He hesitated and said that maybe the Demon King just cared about them so much. They asked him what he was saying, but he exclaimed that it didn't matter. He ran away, saying that he didn't expect that people would think of him that way. He grabbed the slime and said that it was coming with him. He sat on the field and sighed heavily, thinking about the Demon King. He said that being one turned out to be much more difficult, and he never thought about ruling. He decided to stop, because he was no longer the Demon King, and he shouldn't think about something that can't be changed. If he wins, he accepts it, and if he loses, he denies it. Win and only win, to establish himself and never stop. As long as he wins, he doesn't worry about anything. He saw nothing but his victories, and eventually the resulting tumor on his body, called egoism, grew until he died. He wondered what the outcome would be. He lost to the hero, and the orcs teach him what a Demon King should be like. Ignis wondered what the ideal Demon King should be like. Suddenly his monologue was interrupted by the orcs, who declared that they were finished. Ignis asked if the slime understood what they were talking about. In response, the slime said that he was sleeping. The orc handed Ignis a plate with only a skull on it. He wished the knuckle a bon appetit. Ignis looked at him silently, then asked if the orc wanted to eat his skull. In response, the monster exclaimed that he would refuse, since he had enough bones. Ignis sighed. The orc then handed the dish to Ignis's companion. The slime immediately rushed into the dish and began to devour it. The orc asked why Ignis had run away from them then. The king hesitated and said that it was very difficult to explain. Suddenly, the orc said that he understood. He said that the bone needed help to understand itself. The orc said that he knew a good specialist. She was very smart and he had known her for a long time, and she lived in the village of dark elves. Ignis was surprised and asked if these were the dark elves with pointy ears. The orc confirmed it. Ignis hesitated and asked if she agreed to something bad. The orc was amazed. Ignis asked if it wasn't always like that with elves and orcs. The orc exclaimed that Ignis was being too prejudiced against orcs. He said that it was a misunderstanding and that it was not like that at all. From the elves' point of view, they were just pigs without formalities, and from the orcs' point of view, dark elves were just cute demon cats. He asked if Ignis understood. He said that they were as cute as kittens and as passionate as demons. Ignis quietly agreed, but he was lost in thought about the elven village. The orc said that the young men from their village wanted to go there as teachers along with the great leader, and so the orc asked if Ignis wanted to go with them. Ignis wondered what kind of big leader this was. The orc asked what was wrong with the monster. Ignis didn't understand how an orc could teach someone. He took a deep breath, then agreed to go to the dark elf village. He had to see the wisdom of these elves. He exclaimed that he would see everything, and that would be his first step. The orc smiled and said that Ignis should eat well because he had forgotten his skull. Remembering the orc's words about the boys from their village wanting to move there as teachers, Ignis said that he was sorry, but there was something wrong with those guys. Extremely muscular monsters with wide smiles on their faces stood in poses and asked what was wrong with them. They said that they, orcs, are very hardy, They need a lot of subcutaneous fat since they use a lot of energy. One of them approached Ignis and said that they were very different from his race. Ignis said that he was too close. The orc said he would do anything for those muscles, even die of hunger, all for the sake of a perfect body, all to be closer to the previous leader. Ignis said it was too hot. The second orc said that for them, the great leader had always been a role model and their spiritual mentor. They said Ignis simply had to meet him. He ordered them to stop. Slime said he thought the elves would be straining at his bones instead of his arms when they saw him. Ignis said he thought the slime was overestimating his patience. He pulled up his sleeves and said he'd try. He tensed his arms, creating muscles for himself. After that, he exclaimed, telling them to look how good he was with those arms. Suddenly, the slime said that he didn't care. Ignis got angry and said that his friend brought it up himself. Suddenly, they heard a loud and long scream. Ignis asked what the sound was, also saying that it scared him. One of the orcs said that it was their leader calling. Ignis wondered if they were sure they should go there. Ignis was terrified by how furious the roar was. He could only imagine that it would probably be even more sinister. Images began to form in his mind. He thought that whoever trained these orcs must be very obsessed with sports, although that was probably what the main orc warrior should be like. After some time on the road, the orcs said that they had arrived. Ignis was surprised and noticed that it was hot as hell there, but he did not understand why. He took his hands away from his face and noticed with horror that there were real rivers of lava all around him. The orcs asked if he was hot, since their leader was even hotter. They said that he was like an active volcano. Suddenly, a small ball began to rise from the lava, which turned out to be the leader. It rose higher and higher, acquiring more distinct muscular forms. This orc was covered in a layer of magma. Ignis could only breathe in quietly, thinking that he didn't look like an orc at all. The slime reminded him that the orcs had said earlier that he looked like a volcano. The orcs stared at Ignis in silence. Noticing this, his subordinates noticed and decided that he wanted to do something. In the blink of an eye, flames poured from the orc's hands, quickly taking the form of a small dumbbell. Ignis didn't understand why. After that, the orc silently walked away and began to talk. He exclaimed about the beginning of the first lesson and ordered Ignis to watch the movements and repeat them. Noticing this, the orcs exclaimed that this was a lesson from the leader, and if Ignis was a man, he had to go through this. The leader told Ignis to put his hand with the dumbbell forward. Ignis explained that he didn't understand what was going on at all, after which he accordingly asked what was going on. In response to this, the slime said that Ignis probably just needs to try, since it's possible that this is some kind of greeting to them. Ignis wondered if that meant he just had to extend his hand forward. He did so in complete silence. The leader said that Ignis would have to stand in this position for 15 seconds. He was to use only the strength of his arm, without putting any weight on his back or shoulders. Ignis wanted to say something about his hand, but after a few moments he noticed that his hand was already tired. The leader said that now, as he exhaled, Ignis needed to slowly lower his hand. He needed to do this carefully so as not to pull the muscles. Ignis wondered if that was all. The orc said that after he lowered his hand, he had to raise it again. Ignis was surprised. The leader said that when raising his hand, he needs to twist it and also not forget to contract the muscles. Ignis thought he felt fatigue in his arm, but his magic wouldn't help. The orc said Ignis had to do this about 15 times. He said Ignis should do it until he reached his limit. Slime asked if his friend was tired already. Ignis said that after each time it seemed as if the dumbbells were getting heavier. His whole body was pierced by a burning pain. He reached 9 times with difficulty and thought that this was just stupid. He raised his hand and exclaimed that he should not disgrace himself and hold on to the last. He lowered his hand again and turned pale. The pain went from burning to shock. He could no longer raise his hand. He thought that the feeling of weakness was very strange. He was disappointed that he had only done it 12 times. He said heavily that he couldn't do it anymore. The orc quickly extended his hand towards Ignis, which made him think that he was going to be hit, and he closed his eyes. Not noticing no reaction, he opened his eyes and saw the leader offering him another dumbbell. He said that his arm was already at its limit, and also noted that Ignis was strong. He said he only had 3 more times left. He smiled and said he would help him now. The orc said that, when he reached his limit, the demon in his heart whispered that this was enough, and it wasn't worth it. He said that this demon uses their weaknesses against them. That's why they need to train with friends. Friends can change his heart, which without them would always stagnate. They will help defeat this demon, and together they will be stronger. He told Ignis to do it 3 more times, after which he said that he knew Ignis could do it. Slime asked if the leader was joking. Ignis started counting, starting from 13. The orc praised the monster for each time it was raised. Ignis raised the last time and shouted loudly that they were really good. The leader's students said that he had a great attitude, and the leader himself praised Ignis. When Ignis finished his 15th time, everyone around him stood up and started clapping, congratulating Ignis. He thanked them, then exclaimed that he could not do more. The leader said that he had done it very well, and in that case, he should do it 15 times on the other hand. Ignis exclaimed that he would never do that. As a result, his left arm also fell off. The leader laughed and noticed that Ignis looked exactly like one of his acquaintances. And for the first time in a long time, he greeted him as is customary. One of the orcs apologized and said that he must have been mistaken. Ignis shook and asked if that meant that he was so afraid because of a misunderstanding. He said that having an orc friend who looked just like him was normal, because after all, the world was big and a random resemblance to someone else was entirely possible. Ignis asked who the leader was, since he didn't look like an orc at all. The monster said that he was the embodiment of the ancient fire of the Alphatom, Ishkaren's firehammer, gatekeeper of the fire hell, emperor of purgatory, Ifrit. He was called by many names, but his favorite was Gwen. He said he would be happy if they called him that. They were taken aback and noticed that his energy was already running out. His whole body began to hiss and smoke. Gwen looked at it, then said that he was cold. He went in the direction of the lava rivers, where he immediately sank. He dove under the lava with his head, and said that he had made it, and now he was fine and warm. They said that the big leader devoted himself entirely to his body, and therefore, when his body became inactive, he could not speak properly. Ignis thought there was definitely something wrong with him. He said it meant that even his brain was made up of nothing but muscle. The orc told the leader that they were going to the Dark Elf village, and he should make sure he was ready. Hearing this, he was a little confused, then said that they were right. He swam forward. One of the orcs said that it was not that he could not speak properly. It was more like his IQ was dropping. They exclaimed that this was why he was their great leader. They said that this was the spirit they should definitely strive for. Ignis was shocked. He summed up that the leader called himself Guan or Ifrit. He wondered if he was a high-level fire spirit. In that case, he didn't understand why Guan would train with lower-level creatures like orcs. Ignis looked at them and wondered what was so special about them. He couldn't understand why. Slime said it was too early. Ignis was amazed. Slime said that just being able to lift something heavy didn't make someone amazing. They have this strong point, and that's it. Strengths and weaknesses are just something that is needed to decide who to appoint to what position. He said that they should drink to their muscles today, so Ignis shouldn't be upset if he wasn't so good at training. Ignis said that the Demon Kings had ruled by fear for generations. Noticing something strange, he quickly turned around and asked what it was. He said he felt like something touched him, and he felt like he was being pulled somewhere. Slime said he didn't feel anything at all. He guessed it might be ash. Ignis said it felt stronger. He decided to just keep going. They were full of enthusiasm to go to the Dark Elf village. Together they ran, still full of energy. Ignis was lagging behind them and asked if they were going too fast. He said his lungs were already burning. Ignis also wondered why the slime was so fast. At that time, the slime had arms and legs to move quickly. He yelled that the slime should stop doing that because he didn't look like a slime at all. In response, his friend asked what Ignis knew about slimes. Breathing heavily, Ignis said he didn't care and there was no need to rush. Gwen exclaimed that his student was wrong. He said he should try hard while his muscles were still hot. Ignis thought he was too close. Gwen asked if Ignis knew that muscles had different loads, but the motto of their training was to avoid injury. Lifting weights all the time is not good. You can't overdo it. In other words, in order to have an optimal workout, it is better to do several different types of exercises in a row when the body functions are normal. He continued to tell, after which he summed up that, in other words, the appropriate load. The pledge was in time. Ignis agreed with him. Ignis said he didn't know about Quan, but it was too much of a burden for him. One of the orcs said he could already see the village. Gwen was interested in how they were doing. Ignis was glad that they were finally in the village. They had arrived at a settlement of enormous size. The girl looked out of her house and, noticing them, jumped down. She exclaimed that the orcs were already here. She smiled and said that they had finally come, because they had been waiting for them for so long. She welcomed them to the village of Arhat. Gwen shouted that it was not over yet, and it would end if they gave in. He told them to use all their strength. Many of the elves were holding on with great weight as they performed the exercises. Ignis said he'd imagined the elves as more slender creatures. The orcs said that if they could control it, they wouldn't be called dark. Ignis thought about running away, because he didn't want to deal with them. Suddenly, a nice girl who met them said that since they were there, she could show them the village. She said that they were now under the village. It was a common area. There was a market there. She suggested that they take a closer look. Ignis said it was bright despite being underground. He saw windows but was surprised. The girl wanted to explain to him but saw something funny. She threw a small handkerchief into the air and told him to watch. The handkerchief quickly took shape and flew up. She said that if you look closely, you can see many floating balls. In the summer, they use air conditioners, so there is little light. Ignis was surprised and asked if the air conditioners were automatic. She said they were powered by magic. The heaters were stashed away for the winter. They have a lot of useful equipment. Ignis noticed that they have quite advanced tools, and he thought that elves respected the power of nature. The girl said that they were called dark elves for a reason. She also added that there was a master of innovations here. Ignis asked what kind of stupid name that was. The elf thought for a moment and said that the master of innovations had created most of their useful tools. Ignis was surprised. He thought that his weakness was clearer than he thought. He wanted to strengthen his strength. He wanted to improve his staff. He asked loudly if the master of innovations could strengthen his staff. The girl said she was not sure and then asked if he should go himself. After a while, the tall elf noticed that the village chief's daughter and the knuckle had come to him. He asked if they wanted him to look at his staff. He said it was easy. He later said that he tried, but judging by the results, it was impossible. Ignis looked disappointed. The master of innovations said that he knew he was bragging, but anyone would get the same result. He asked where Ignis had found it. Usually you can tell the type of wood the magic staff is made of. Pine, dogwood, beech, or oak. But the wood the staff was made of no longer exists on Earth. Ignis asked what that meant. The master of innovations had studied little of the history of trees, but he thought that something that old might be a stardust tree or a peace tree. He also noticed that there was a seal on the staff. He asked Ignis where he got it from. The monster said it was strange and he couldn't remember. He said that the staff had always been with him. Novacious asked if it had been there since birth. Ignis wondered if it had been there since he was born. Suddenly his eyes went dark and his body fell apart. The girl and Novacious rushed to him, asking if he was okay and if he was hurt by any chance. Ignis stood up and said that everything was fine and he had just lost consciousness for a moment. Novacious assumed that this staff was connected to Ignis's existence. He asked if he could remember anything. Ignis didn't know if it would be useful, but the staff could use high-level magic that exceeded his abilities. In fact, he escaped from a desperate situation by using a high-level magic called soul separation. All the magic that Ignis could use was old. Novation noticed that his new acquaintance could also use ancient magic. He said he didn't know the details, but some secrets, including Ignis's past, were likely contained within the staff. He looked at the staff and said that this story had become complicated. Suddenly, they heard someone stomping. An older guy burst into the room and exclaimed that they had a problem. He said that something had happened to Gimlet's grandmother. The master of innovations was surprised. Someone was running, wanting to show something, and his companion asked him to stop. One of them put something wooden on the ground and said that they had arrived. A large orc and a girl chained to a bed were in a beautiful field. The orc said that this was his favorite place. The girl sat on the bed and looked at the nature around her with admiration. She said it was incredibly beautiful. He sat down on the ground and said that he really didn't understand it. He said that she shouldn't sit alone and be sad in a dark room, and then asked if she felt any better. The girl smiled and said that she was already old and it was becoming difficult for her to go out. The orc did not understand what the problem was, after which he said that this was the reason why he brought her bed. The girl looked at him in amazement, then laughed sweetly. She cut a leaf from a tree that the wind had blown away and said that it was quite funny. The girl gently touched the petal, after which it turned into a luxurious bouquet. The orc was genuinely amazed. He shouted that it was amazing and that it was magic. The girl was surprised and asked if he was talking about flowers. He kept shouting that they were amazing and these flowers were beautiful. He said that he had heard before that her magic was amazing, but he had never thought that everything was so beautiful. He shouted with all sincerity that it was really great. The girl held a bouquet and said that these flowers were absolutely everywhere, but if he liked them, then everything was fine. He shouted and asked her to show her more magic. The orc said he could take her to other places. At that time, the elf was watching them. He smiled and said that his grandmother seemed to be enjoying herself quite well. A moment later, he lifted her bed again. He carried the girl above him, showing her the most varied landscapes of such a wonderful world. She was truly delighted. Gimlet was surprised that they had talked for so long. The girl confirmed this and said that the day she left for war had been a little difficult for her, but she was not one to stop. She folded her arms and said that it was so long ago. The girl thought it was even funny. For 1,000 years, the elves watched this world. They have seen how states come and die, how autumn flowers give way to winter skies, and it is not at all funny. The girl said with heaviness that it looked like a dark world. She closed her eyes and noted that the world was changing, turning crimson. She asked if they thought she was dwelling too much on old times. She smiled. The girl extended her hand to the orc and asked if they could go to that place again. The orc was very surprised, after which he lowered his head guiltily and remained silent. Suddenly, someone cried out, begging the orc to do it. He was surprised. Gimlet, with tears in his eyes, asked the orc to do it not for him, but for her. Otherwise, he would never forgive him. He stood up and said that if that was what she wanted, then everything was fine. He said confidently that they would go to the land of memories together. The girl said it had been so long since she had been outside. That day, too, there had been a smell of flowers and a faint scent of green grass. The sun was high and the sky was blue. Everything was just like that day. Everything was incredibly beautiful. The wind was blowing when the orc finally said that they were where they were going. The girl opened her eyes wide and said that it was really beautiful there. It was that very field from their warm memories. Behind one of the few trees in the field stood Gimlet, silently listening to what was happening out of his line of sight. The girl smiled when he said that, although it didn't look like she was dying, even if her appearance didn't change, her soul was wearing out a lot. It becomes difficult to do something, and it becomes even more difficult to do what you like. The word now has disappeared. Only the aroma of the past becomes the present. He looked to the sky and said that she was already beginning to forget the face of her grandson, but nevertheless, she still remembered this beautiful landscape. Ignis asked if these were Gimlet's thoughts. He asked what had happened. Gimlet told him that, in order to show his grandmother to the doctor, he had volunteered for the Demon King's army to raise money. Ignis was genuinely shocked when he heard this. Gimlet said that the Demon King's army had lost back then, but still managed to escape from the battlefield. He found a doctor and tried to return to the village. He told him that he was with him then. Slime told Gimlet that he had kept his promise, and therefore he should not torment himself. Gimlet clenched his fist and said that it was so, but it was still sore. He began to cry and said that he could do nothing. He didn't understand at all why the Demon King had to start that war at that time. But if it hadn't happened, nothing would have changed. An orc approached them. He approached them with a rather sad expression, unable to say anything. However, Gimlet understood everything without words. His eyes began to water, and he himself lost his grip. He fell to the ground and began to cry for his now-deceased grandmother. Ignis sat silently in the field, thinking about something. Slime noticed that his friend was depressed and asked if this was the first time for him. Ignis said that they lost the war, and he was so sorry. He lost everything, and he finally realized that they were all the same. He wondered what would happen if he won. Slime said that if they win, they lose something, because it is a war. Someone dies. Slime said that, to be honest, the elf he doesn't know just died. It's common for people like them to die. Territorial disputes, hunting, meeting heroes. Someone always dies. He also said that every corpse has its own story, and each of the stories is stained with blood. He asked why. If Ignis wants to become the Demon King, He should know what he thinks and what he lives with. Also how he will die and who he will give life to, what this life will bring, and how he will act. This is where the new introductory chapter of the Demon King begins. The slime created small wings for itself, which it used to rise into the air. It told Ignis that he shouldn't dwell on this funeral. He also said that in this case, Ignis would be able to learn more than was written anywhere. He remained silent. Ignis wondered if the slime meant that he shouldn't waste his life for nothing. He clenched his fist and thought that if this were a war he was involved in, he would have a duty to see it through to the end. Ignis stood up and said he couldn't wait to see what would happen next. Gwen said he understood Ignis's intentions to help the girl prepare for the funeral. He said that funerals for elves are very labor-intensive, but there is no escape from it. Gwen said that he understands Ignis, and he is going to help as well. He asked permission to say something. Afterwards, he said that he went to different places to rest his soul, and he had many of them with a guilty look. Gimlet said that the mayor's daughter is in charge here, so Ignis should go to her. She is helping prepare for the funeral. The girl told him that there was a token-type item, and it seemed to have illusion magic that made them appear however they wanted. She explained that he would make them look beautiful at the funeral. Ignis asked if it was a scam. He dragged hand-sewn runes into mourning clothes. He thought it was hard work. He was surprised that there was so much work to do to see off one elf. After doing small tasks all day, Ignis realized something. Funerals are an act of love, and no one dies alone. Everyone comes together at a funeral. Ignis noticed one house and asked why the light was constantly on. The girl explained that it was Taneka's workshop. In order to cremate an elf, a relative had to light a magical fire. But most of the fire magic was created by their ancestors, so they send it to their ancestors along with this fire. That is why the type of fire must be as old as possible, especially since the primeval fire is exceptional. It is the progenitor of all fire. However, no one knows how to rekindle this old fire. Ignis was silent. She said that this is the reason why the creative master so wants to get closer to the original fire. She said that she was Gimbred's only grandmother, so his feelings simply cannot be described normally. Time passed very quickly. Ignis stood at the entrance to the workshop and said that the ceremony would take place tomorrow. Slime said that he was a little worried. He entered the building and said he would not disturb, but there he saw a master who was diligently studying. He did not even answer Ignis. Slime noticed that everything seemed to be done. Ignis was surprised. Suddenly, the elf fell on the table and called his grandmother. He was lying on the table and saying that he couldn't do it and that he had been tricked. He didn't know what to do. Ignis could look at this and then tried to reach out to the boy who was crying so bitterly. After a while, many elves gathered in one place. In their hands, they held small lanterns with fire burning in them. They said that this fire would show her the way, and this is not the end, but only the beginning of her new path. A boat sailed to this place, on which a girl appeared with a sweet smile on her face. They said that heaven would be her new home. They finally said goodbye to her. As soon as the boat was closed, Gimlet could not contain himself any longer. He screamed loudly. Bitter, painful tears flowed from his face, and he screamed at his grandmother. He said that he did not know what to do now. He said he was very sorry that he couldn't do anything. He cried and begged her for forgiveness. He couldn't cure her illness, and if the medicine didn't work, there was alchemy. If he can't do it with alchemy, then he will study a lot and he will do it. There was nothing he could do. Too much time had passed. He didn't want her to be buried like a pile of useless junk. He said that if she had time for that, it would be good if they could be together for at least a little while longer. Gimlet cried bitterly, asking what kind of master he was that he could do nothing. The boat went further and further. Gimlet closed his eyes and called his beloved grandmother again. Suddenly, the boy was very surprised, because he saw a bright fire from the boat in which his grandmother was. He wondered if this was the primordial fire. Gimlet knew it was impossible, since it was not finished yet, and he could not reproduce it. Suddenly, Gimlet stood in front of him and said that this was his primordial fire. Gimlet looked at him in amazement. Slime also silently watched what was happening. Ignis said that it was rather selfish, because the one who once started the war became so sentimental. The one who laughed yesterday turns into a mass of meat that cannot speak or shake his head. This must be what oblivion is, and what moves people's minds. He said he was still dying, and he still needed mana, but Just a little bit. He understood. He didn't know how it would help, but he wanted to do something. He knew nothing at all. Ignis asked if the hero knew what monsters really were, what he would do. He wanted to know his answer. Ignis said he was sorry because he couldn't carry the luggage. Carrying all the bags on himself, Gwen said it was okay because it was just a light workout for him. Gimlet noticed that Gwen was very reliable. Suddenly, Ignis asked the elf if it was a good idea to up and go and trade in another village. Gimlet explained that he had to pay for the funeral expenses and he couldn't cry forever. He smiled and said that it was hard to live there at a time like this. He stated that he would rather get to work. Then he asked if Ignis had learned the secret of the staff. In response, the monster said that he was worried about the elf. However, he wondered why Gimlet was interested in the secret of his staff. Afterwards, he noted that he had learned something. They say there is an expert. They called her the Queen of Concealment, who suggested that maybe they could get a clue with her help. Gimlet thought for a moment and said that he had something he wanted to give to Ignis. He reached into his bag and thanked Ignis for his help. He quickly pulled out a couple of items from his bag and handed them to Ignis with a smile. The monster was a little surprised. On his hand lay a small silver wand and a guide ring. Gimlet said that Ignis's staff was something he didn't know about, and it was sealed. They couldn't dispel the seal or study it, so he advised Ignis to take it, since it was the best he had for now. Then he asked what about this ring. He said that it is a literal measure, and Ignis can know the state of the seal when he puts it on. It will help him. Gimlet explained that the seal is always unstable and dangerous, but for some reason the seal can break very unexpectedly. He also noted that Ignis would want to break it to learn the past. However, Gimlet had a bad feeling about this, so he said that it was better to find out first. He could strengthen the seal, but he did not know what to do next. Ignis refused and said that they could do it. But sooner or later they would still have to face it. The elf agreed and said he understood. At that time, several people were watching them. They said that a cleanup operation was beginning. Some time ago, a meeting of saints, knights under the direct command of the Holy King, was held. There met Kazodi of the Earthquake, Artemilius of Reverberation, Vincari, the Maiden of Water, Infia von Triton, the right hand of the sage, and the motionless trees of Juria. One of the saints put papers on the table and said that this was all the data. He said that several years had passed since the Demon King was killed. The monsters have dispersed and the humans have regained their strength. The demons no longer have the power they once had, and it is time for them to go on the offensive. Infia said that they should attack the monsters from different directions, thus gathering them in one pile. Afterwards, they should destroy them. The command was given to them by the Holy King. The girl said that first of all they need to gather soldiers, provide security for the people, and so on. The main thing they need to do is arm themselves. She said she would take the initiative to put pressure on the rest of the world. She then asked why the sixth saint was not present at the meeting, also asking where he was. In response, she was told that he had forgotten the duty of the six saints and that he had gone mad. She sighed and said that they were originally the guardian knights of each territory, and he wanted to be himself. Reason for fools, but they did not understand what he was trying to achieve. Jiri noticed that Grandfather Earthquake was silent all the time. She knew that indirectly he was the only one of the six saints who had collaborated with the destruction of the Demon King and with him. She said that if he has a sword, he is a hero, but if he uses magic, he is a genius. She said that he is a lion running forward and that it is amazing. Suddenly, she caught Infia's puzzled gaze. Jiria panicked, and Infia thanked the saint for her loving story. Kazodi laughed and agreed. He said that the fire line was still in his repertoire. The people who were eavesdropping on them were sitting very close. They said it was bad, and they knew he was getting out of control. He hadn't done anything since he destroyed the Demon King. They said it was pretty drastic, but he had to do it. Otherwise, he would soon turn to witch hunting. The girl in the neat but massive hat said she hoped that was not the case. She said that was the reason she created the Witches Guild. Their only problem was people who were too brave. The man who was with her said that he had a son, and she might think it was stupid, but to protect him he was ready to kill any creature. The girl said that she knew he would say that. The wind was strong that day. Someone dressed in a thick cloak stood under a tree. He thought that after all, it was so. He realized that, without a doubt, this world had its own secret. A small bush rustled loudly, when suddenly something flew over it. There was a heated discussion about something important in the forest. Ignis sighed deeply, asking Gimlet if there were many monsters in this village. The young elf thought for a moment, then said that there would be plenty of them. It was all because of the queen. The boy said that she was amazing. Ignis looked up at the sky and took a deep breath, saying that they should move on. Suddenly, they heard a long cry that was addressed to them. They turned back and saw 4 bandits who were fully equipped, asking the monsters with a menacing look what they were doing in this place. They screamed loudly, asking if these monsters even knew whose territory they were on. Ignis was a little surprised and asked what was going on, also asking who the hell this goblin was. Slime calmly informed him that they were the ones who thought these territories belonged to them. The goblins ran at a fast pace towards the monsters, shouting loudly along the way that they could hear them. With loud cries, they rushed across the field straight towards the boys. Ignis watched the scene in silence. The goblins surrounded the boys from all sides and noted that they knew nothing about these monsters, and their identities were not established. Gimlet slowly emerged from behind the tree and asked them to stop. He smiled awkwardly and said that he was just a simple merchant who was going to the village on business. The goblin became even more angry when he heard that they wanted to infiltrate their home village. He said that this would never happen. The wary goblins said that they already knew that a human base had been built not far from here, and now these creatures had begun to walk everywhere. These evil people disguise themselves as monsters and collect information everywhere. They began to slowly but threateningly approach the guys, saying that they were going to skin them. The goblins started to shout something, but Ignis calmly informed them that they did not want to fight them. He also noted that it would not solve their problem. He held his weapon towards the goblin's neck and called them fools. Ignis calmly asked if he really looked that much like a human. He added, saying that humans wouldn't choose between such different bodies. He told the tense goblin to look at him. The slime asked his friend what he was doing, also noting that Ignis seemed to have gotten stronger during this time. He agreed with Ignis and said that he didn't think people would choose such a disguise, since it wasn't easy to move with such a body. Slime asked if they had decided everything, and if they could go now. Someone came closer and said that it seemed to be too late, because goblins could not even distinguish monsters from people. The doll-like monster apologized and said that they seemed to be inconvenienced. He then yelled at his subordinates and said that he had already told them to use their 5 senses. Ignis asked the master who he was. The small goblin apologized for being rude, as he had forgotten to introduce himself. He said that he was the blade of this village, the one who stained the land with the blood of his enemies. They could call him boss. Afterwards, he asked Ignis who he was. The monster stood up straight and said that he was the leader who controlled evil, who had destroyed many countries, who had captured everything he wanted. King Ignis. Gimlet asked what the strange greeting was. He exclaimed that he was an ordinary merchant who was going to the village to sell his goods. The boss recognized himself. The goblins asked if they knew each other. Gimlet said that he used to trade a lot and their boss often bought from him. The goblins fell to the ground and began to apologize, as they did not know and were disrespectful. Gimlet said that everything was fine. Ignis noticed that the elf seemed to have found friends. The boss apologized again for the inconvenience and said that he would take the boys to the village. He addressed him as the king of demons with a small dream. On the way, Gimlet sighed, noticing something that had not happened before. The boss said that in times like these, they had to be prepared. It was almost a castle. There were very high walls. Gimlet asked if they needed to be so careful. The boss said it was because of the people who had attacked them more than once. When they arrived, they found themselves in a stunning place. Ignis said he wanted to look around, also asking where the queen was. Suddenly, someone turned to the boss and noticed that he had brought monsters again. In front of them stood a girl who said that without her sister's permission, they were outsiders, and she would get into trouble. The girl sighed extremely heavily and deeply, after which she said that now is a time of real crisis. But that is not even the point, because she simply cannot let everyone into the city, since it could be dangerous. The boss covered his face with his hat and said he was sorry, but he didn't want the place to disappear. He asked the girl to just let them rest. The girl with a dissatisfied face was about to repeat her previous words about not letting everyone in, when suddenly someone approached them and said that they could stay. He said that they could stay if they were Lord Tarek's guests. A creature with the face of a horse appeared before them, riding on another horse. He exclaimed that Lord Tarek's guests were also his guests. Ignis stared at the monster in amazement, unable to believe that he was seeing a horse riding another horse. The monster loudly asked if they shouldn't be more friendly to their guests. He said that first of all, it is sincerity, and doubts turn everyone into their enemies, so they cannot properly understand the situation. Ignis noticed that this man clearly likes to talk. Suddenly, the girl got excited, remembering the monster's words about sincerity, and asked if that was what he wanted. She turned to the guests and loudly screamed that she was sorry that she had spoken like that, after which she asked why they had come. Gimlet looked away and said he was there to trade. That's all. Gwen was hungry, and the slime wanted to find someone to talk to. Ignis said he had something to show the queen, so they should take him to her. The girl screamed loudly with tears in her eyes, saying that they should stop telling everyone at once, because she didn't understand anything. Slime said that in that case, she should listen to him. Then he told the girl to give him the village map. She obediently gave him the map. Then the slime said that they needed to meet the queen, to which the girl said that they could leave it to her. The slime also said that they needed a place to rest. The girl smiled and said that she heard them. Slime noticed that the girl knew everything about everything in the village, after which he noted that she was an extremely smart young lady. The joyful girl confirmed this and said that he could ask her about anything. Walking through the village, Ignis noticed something and asked the girl why only the main gate was made of stone. In response, the girl said that it was so because it was the only weak part, because on the other sides, there were huge cliffs. There was a steep slope from which even mountain goats fall. They used their terrain as a weapon, creating an impenetrable fortress out of the village. Ignis asked if they were attracting more attention by building something so big. The girl said that there was nothing to worry about because she had blue eyes of starfrost. Ignis asked what kind of eyes they were. Ignis asked her, wondering if she knew. The girl laughed and said that she couldn't do anything, so she would tell. She explained that her sister's magical power was special and she had unmatched magical power in general. However, one power stands out among all of them. She can reveal any difficult seal or past. The evidence of this rare power is her eyes, shining like a blue frost star. She asked if he understood, because it was really amazing. Ignis asked if her sister was really that strong. The girl confirmed it. She said that even though she had such great power, she was not as great as the Demon King. She didn't want to show off, but her sister only uses her powers for the benefit of monsters. The girl smiled and said that her sister was simply the best in the world. Ignis hesitated a bit, then said that he was looking forward to meeting her. After some time, they had already arrived at the right place. The girl was having her conversation with the one who asked her to provide them with work because they would finish it. The girl was surprised and said that in that case, they should start with this. The monster exclaimed that this was truly the best job he had ever done. They met the Queen of Concealment, whose name was Alde Karifa. She was telling her workers that, in that case, they should finish. The girl called her sister, and as soon as Alde heard this voice, she smiled widely, after which she threw herself into the arms of her beloved sister. The girl smiled and asked Alde if she really missed him. The queen said that it was not like that at all. Then the girl pointed towards Ignis and said that she had brought someone. The queen looked in that direction and saw Ignis, who smiled awkwardly and greeted the queen. Seeing him, Alde smiled, calling him a knuckle. Ignis became visibly angry. He looked at the girl silently. Slime said that even so he couldn't hide all his bones. The girl asked what was wrong. Ignis turned away and thought with tears in his eyes that it was true, so he shouldn't worry so much. The queen looked at him and asked what he wanted from her. After some time spent explaining, Alde asked if that meant, in other words, that Ignis wanted her to examine the staff. Ignis said that it was, but warned the queen to be careful. Smiling, Alde said that he could leave it to her. She touched the staff, and the entire room was filled with magic circles of varying sizes. Ignis looked around in amazement, while the slime wondered what kind of magic it was. The queen breathed heavily, asking if it was true. She felt many eyes looking at her, and then she let go of the staff and fell to the floor. She asked what was wrong with the staff, saying it was abnormal. Ignis said it was bad, then asked what she saw. The girl hesitated, then said that she felt different. This power was like from another dimension, something dark. It was a terrifyingly large power. She said that this extraordinary magic power belonged to the Millennium Emperor. Hearing this, the slime asked how Alde knew what kind of magic power he had. The girl said that 1,000 years ago she had already felt this before. It was at that very moment when she had just touched him. Because of this, she forgot who she was and all. At that moment, she heard nothing, saw nothing, and felt nothing. She had no idea what to do. She was very scared, and she could notice that the same power was coming from this staff as from that emperor. Ignis thought that the 1,000-year-old emperor would be the key to solving this mystery. He asked Alda if she knew anything else about the 1,000-year-old emperor. The queen's sister looked at Ignis in confusion and said that he was the first demon king. She asked if he knew him. She said that his strength was unmatched and his eyes were connected to heaven and earth. He was an emperor who knew everything and could overcome death. The girl could not know whether it was true or not, but for thousands of years the empire created by the emperor defeated many heroes. It is even said that he built a country of happiness. She said that he created a country by uniting all the monsters. And this is the greatest creation of the 1,000-year-old emperor. Suddenly the slime noticed something unusual. Ignis caught a small stone and asked what it was. Slime noticed that the ceiling of the building was crumbling. At that moment, a terrible thought occurred to him. Suddenly the whole room started shaking. On the roof of the building they could hear terrifying sounds. Slime noticed that something was happening up there and then exclaimed that they needed to get out of there. When they went outside, they noticed that the village was under attack by a human army. Many people were attacking and killing the monsters that lived in the village. Ignis looked at this in shock. Someone tried to attack the monster, but Ignis fought off the attack and sternly said that they had come here at the wrong time. The queen screamed, asking what was happening. She saw many people and also many dead monsters. Seeing the whole picture, she screamed heavily and asked what they should do. One of the people rushed to attack Ald, wanting to kill her. Suddenly, Ignis appeared in front of him and threw the slime at the man. In an instant, the slime engulfed the man, turning him into nothing. Covered in blood, Ignis told the queen that she was safe now. The girl said that was not true. She did not understand how this could happen. Ignis said they had breached the main gates, and fear and confusion were contagious. The situation was pretty bad. Suddenly, the queen's sister, Alicia, ordered everyone to evacuate quickly. Alde looked at the girl, then turned around abruptly and told the others to follow Alicia's instructions. She told the demons who could fight to take up arms and fight. Noticing the queen, the monster shouted to the lady that it was really her. The boss and his army made sure Alde was safe. He said he just couldn't wait to get to her. He said sternly that he would take care of everything, so Alda should take everyone and run away. Seeing Tarek, the girl was very happy because everything was okay with them. She said she had no idea what was going on here. The goblins said guiltily that they had sent too many people, perhaps even more than 1,000. They said that there was a huge difference in strength. They suggested that it seemed like the monsters here had been monitored for a long time, and today they sent wizards to the main gate. The humans had destroyed their gates, and now the monsters were defenseless. The boss lowered his hat and said that the situation was really bad. Suddenly, Ignis hit the ground hard with his staff and said that, in that case, they should turn the situation in their favor. Noticing Ignis, the boss was surprised that he was still there, also saying that it was bad. He said that Ignis was just a guest, and he better get out of there. The boss said it was not too late to escape with the others. He asked if their guest wanted to die. Ignis grinned, then said that he knew that war alone would not make him king. That's why he traveled so much, and eventually he came to this place. But no matter how far he went, he could never avoid war. He thought that's what the Demon King would say. The boss was speechless. Ignis said there was no need to say more. He asked, first of all, if they were just going to give up. The boss chuckled and asked who Ignis thought they were. He said that the battle was now in their hands and they had to create the right conditions to turn the tide. He said they would use the village reservoir to flood them, and he would personally send people to the sluice. If they used magic, they could make even more water. This could cause a flood, but the problem was that they needed time to do it. The boss said that they could buy some time. But on the one hand, the humans had the advantage in numbers and better equipment. On the other hand, they have no troops or equipment. But if they had someone to lead them, it would be better. The boss asked if Ignis had experience in this. Slime noticed that Ignis actually had experience. Understanding what was going on, Ignis agreed. He decided that he would fight even in complete darkness. He would fight through the pain or on the rubble of the ruins. He had clearly decided that he would fight with them. Thus, the armies of men and monsters met in a fierce battle. Ignis attacked the men who ran at him with spears. After killing one man, he told the others that the long spears could cause problems, so they should use shields and boards and take advantage of cover. They needed to destroy the stage and blind the people. They needed to buy some time, but they shouldn't try to fight the people. He ordered the monsters to only play with the people. The boss stood at the head of the troops. He said that whoever is not afraid of the sword of the scurvy should try to go against him. People stopped, not understanding what this demonic speed was. They noticed that things were starting to change. They looked at Ignis, who was leading the troops, and asked what was going on in this place. Ignis holds the line and doesn't think for a second about giving up. They've been fighting for too long. They're almost out of strength. They're already running out. The body, exhausted by the battle, did not want to obey at all. Ignis remembers the past. Suddenly, Ignis misses an attack, and because of this, he receives a rather large, painful wound in the shoulder. Meanwhile, his warriors desperately tried with all their might to hide behind wooden shields from the cruel spears, fast arrows, and piercing swords of people. Ignis believes that, despite the fact that he and the warriors, they still managed to take up defensive positions, they were only able to reduce losses and nothing more. Ignis realizes that reinforcements are already coming through the gate. The demon immediately understands that, in the end, if this situation continues, the front line will soon collapse. There is complete devastation all around, only the name of the street remains. Ignis is attacked by another enemy, and the demon, fortunately, was able to repel it, putting his sword in front of him in time. The slime unexpectedly, but very timely, crashes into the head of the enemy warrior, and he, losing consciousness, falls to the ground, no longer having the ability to fight. Ignis praised the slime, but deep down he is clearly immensely grateful to his friend. The creature accepts the praise, turns to Ignis and asks if the demon does not think this is a bad sign. He clearly does not like this whole situation. Ignis looks up and carefully explains that it doesn't matter at all, because when the flood comes, the power will definitely be on their side. Besides, they are holding the line quite well. The creature doubts and asks if too much time has passed. He wonders if they will even be able to defeat the enemies who are fiercely opposed to them before the flood begins. Ignis raises his head even higher. He addresses the slime, exhales heavily, lowering his horned head, and says that they will still have to be content with what they have. The demon addresses the slime again and asks it to do him a favor. Some time later, the boss is in a difficult fight. His sword does not leave the bodies of enemies alone. The man walks among the fallen soldiers and their swords firmly planted in the ground and hears a voice from the side. The subordinate announces that the sluice mechanism is now broken. He thinks that people have already guessed everything. The subordinate suggests to his boss to send trolls there because they are strong enough and such a task will not be difficult for them. Ignis stands to the side, watches the boss and his subordinate, and then confidently explains that this is impossible because the trolls already have other work. To cut off human reinforcements, the demon sent trolls to the main gate. It was thanks to them that the front line was saved. Even if the trolls managed to buy some time, they will still need to do something with the gateway. The man asks if Ignis really wants to open it himself. Despite everything, Ignis is extremely determined, and the man says that in the face of such pressure, this is the worst decision. No matter how hard they tried, their plan was somehow discovered, and now everything works against them. Now nothing will change, because everything is working in favor of the enemies. The demon is firmly convinced that he cannot allow this under any circumstances. Meanwhile, Guan, the Orc Lord, is furious as he crawls out from under the rubble. He walks through the forest among the trees and thinks about his own thoughts. He is sure that there is no sun in the universe that never comes out. He intends to prove it to everyone. The slime approaches Ignis. Arriving at the place, he says that he did as the demon asked, and he said that he can definitely destroy everything in one blow. Ignis immediately understands that they will be able to use the gateway. The demon looks to the side and immediately understands that the time has come and orders everyone to disperse. The demons rush away from the battlefield without looking back. People in the heat of mad rage do not understand what is happening, because the demons began to retreat so suddenly and unexpectedly. They again raise their swords and make a firm decision to defeat the enemies and go to the end. The leader, in luxurious and strong armor, raised his hands up, holding a sword tightly in one, and called on his comrades to fight. so that there would be an opportunity to finally put an end to all this disorder. He loudly announces that the gates are finally open again and that the games have long since ended. The man pointed the tip of his sword in the direction of the attack and called on the soldiers to crush all the demons in the indicated direction. Meanwhile, Ignis runs among the dilapidated houses and buildings from the line of soldiers with weapons. A crowd of people in heavy armor discovered the unfortunate demon and, screaming and running, rushed after him, raising their hands with spears and swords high into the air to raise their fighting spirit. All the warriors were furiously determined to win, and, seeing the enemy, they began to shout loudly and shrilly that he must not be missed under any circumstances, and for ease of communication among themselves and designation they called him Horned. As soon as the demon turned the corner, the warriors immediately caught up with him. Without the slightest delay, they did not retreat from him even a step. At one point, they were stopped by a huge stream of water, more like a tsunami. As it turned out, as soon as he turned the corner, a huge wave crashed down on the enemies and washed away all the people, who even without this incident had no way to get out of the trap because of their heavy armor. They helplessly floundered in the water. The remaining soldiers who had not yet been washed away ran as fast as they could away from the huge waves. Ignis watched from above. He had managed to climb higher and escape the flood. He was not visible among the wooden plank buildings. Ignis thinks that this event is now over, when suddenly his attention is drawn to loud screams off to the side. Two silhouettes were in the raging waves, hoping to catch hold of at least some broken board or some other object. Two girls tried to save themselves. One of them screamed loudly and pitifully, as loud as she could, and called Alicia to hold on even tighter, and the other just asked her sister for forgiveness. The demon was horribly surprised when he saw the queen and her sister in trouble. Alicia helped with the evacuation of children, so she herself was almost the last to evacuate. It was at this risky moment that the queen decided to help her sister. Ignis uses the magic of the Eternals, and magical streams rush to the victims. The demon uses his magic to try his best to hold on to the girls in the water, and asks the others to also grab onto the magical racks he created with magic from his staff. Suddenly the board on which Ignis stood cracked, and he fell immediately as the other boards gave way and crumbled into splinters. The subjects only managed to stretch out their hands to the demon who had already fallen into the abyss of the waves madly beating against the walls of the buildings. A terrible, impenetrable darkness through which not a ray of light can be seen. This condition can be explained as clouding of consciousness and dizziness after a blow to the head. Suddenly, someone's armored hand grabs the thin wrist of another hand. Ignis sits and tries to come to his senses with effort. Suddenly, the demon is instantly awakened by screams from the side, and he immediately comes to his senses. The queen angrily and furiously asked the guard to give the thing back because it was very dear to her. The stolen thing turned out to be the queen's precious crown. The guard took this item from the queen, who was locked in a cage. He addresses her as a snake and insistently asks her to get off him. He took her things with the words that this crown will be a gift for the royal family. The girl screams loudly in objects while the guard elbows her in the face. The man notices that the queen is very persistent. The girl glares at him, wiping her nose, forced to endure the inconvenience caused to her. He leans on his spear and asks with disgust why she can't just give it to him. The guard thinks that the girl should thank Mr. Vargas for the fact that she is still alive at all. The guard, with a disdainful expression on his face, then carefully explains that if he had been given the order, he would have immediately dealt with the girl. The queen did not listen to him at all, and only tried to get her crown back with screams. Meanwhile, Ignis came to his senses completely and, observing this picture, asked if this meant that they were not going to defeat them yet. And the queen turned to him, and was glad that the demon had finally woken up. At this time, after such words, the demon thought about the fact that the queen had sweetly called him Sweetie. Out loud, he said that he thought that he and the queen had been captured after they had all been washed away by the water. The girl sadly closes her eyes and bows her head. She says that the situation is quite similar to the situation described by Ignis. She supplements the demon's conclusion by saying that only later did she wake up already at this base. The queen threw her arms up and flew straight up with her strong tail and accidentally hit her head on the bars of the cage. She hoped with genuine sincerity that her sister Alicia was okay. The demon does not immediately understand and asks the girl to slow down with her impulses. He sits and is sincerely surprised that she does not immediately understand that they are in a cage. The queen scratched her head. She did not believe the words she heard, but still concluded that this was definitely not very good. She leaned against the ground and raised her head, turned to Ignis and asked where his voice was coming from. Ignis thought, did the girl really want to tell him with this question that she was blind? The demon waited for her answer, and the girl only turned her empty gaze of bright eyes towards the sound. She closed her eyes and said that this was not quite the right statement. As it turned out, her magic was a little special. To be honest, all the girl's senses were dulled. The magic was so thick that it even interfered with the circulation of blood in the body. This is especially true of the eyes. The queen explains that she lost her sight as soon as she was born. Ignis immediately guesses that the crown stolen by the guard compensates for this lack of vision. Now, it is not surprising that the queen really did not want to give it back. It turned out that this is not the only reason. For the girl, this crown is special. This crown serves as a sign that mysteriously connects her and her beloved sister Alicia. Since the girl was blind and had incredible magic, she thought that going outside would not change anything, which is why she stayed at home for a long time. However, her sister studied hard to help her. She made a magical prosthetic eye. It was the first time in her life that she saw the world around her. She admits that she will never forget the feeling when colors poured into their home, when she finally saw how beautiful the world outside was. After that moment, she became more cheerful and she changed. Gradually, she got to know everyone and was able to join the group. This all happened thanks to her sister Alicia. This crown contains all the girl's memories. This crown is not only a prosthesis, but also a beautiful, skillful decoration that was handmade with love. The girl received more and more decorations every birthday. Everyone complimented her on how beautiful she was. The girl started to burst into tears, and Ignis realized that he had taken the topic in the wrong direction. He began to say that he had meant something completely different. He understands that the situation is very difficult, especially for him, when it comes to other things besides war. He sits down and immediately understands that he is helpless at this moment. The demon wonders how many words he needs to say. Then the slime comes to the rescue and says that the demon must say that he will definitely return the crown to the queen. Ignis looks at the slime with great surprise. He is shocked that the slime was so close and unnoticed to him all this time, and asks how long the creature has been here. The guards heard the loud cries of the demon interrogating the slime and ordered the creatures to immediately shut up. Ignis this time asks much more quietly about how it turned out that the slime was nearby. He justifies himself by saying that he was simply observing. He admits that it was actually difficult to track Ignis in all the chaos. As it turned out, during the flood, the slime skillfully used the board, which by a lucky chance was floating nearby, and continued to ride the raging waves without losing faith in itself. He later found Ignis and was definitely lucky that he made the demon spit out all the water from his body, thus saving him. Then the demon was almost immediately and without delay surrounded by people who mercilessly attacked the fort with weapons. The slime clearly did not have time to escape, and therefore had to hide in Ignis's collar to avoid hasty detection. The demon praises the slime, smiles and asks if he could accidentally turn into a key so that he could open the cage's lock. The slime gives him a thumbs up and says that it would be an incredibly easy task for him. The demon says that in that case, they need to have a quick briefing, which the queen will also take part in. She turns around and asks if the demon said anything. She thought she heard a voice, but she can't say where. The demon apologized to the girl, leaned closer to her, and whispered that the slime was now with them in the cage and could definitely turn into a key and free them. The girl was surprised and asked if the slime had really been here all this time. Slime good-naturedly throws his arms over the boy's shoulders and hugs the demon and the queen and says that his abilities and being next to him definitely mean that they will be able to escape at absolutely any moment. Fortunately, the day is already drawing to a close. The demon, the queen, and the slime make a firm decision to escape as soon as they have a suitable opportunity. At this time, the crown was standing on top of the closet. It was all dirty, and there were small scales lying nearby. The man leaves the room and says that only at the end did she have a beautiful expression on her face, and that he is looking forward to meeting her sister. Ignis reminds them that before they get to the main point of their plan with the queen and the slime, they need to solve one small problem that has suddenly appeared. After all, they don't know where the exit is. Slime asks the same question and also confirms that this is quite a big problem. He notes that this problem is so absurd that it even becomes inexplicably funny. Of course they don't have a map. Although the design of this base, for some unknown reason seems too primitive for Ignis. From a distance, the base looks quite impressive, but all the buildings here are made of cloth and sticks. All the tents are hastily assembled from scrap materials. It was probably a simple camp that was expanded and turned into an outpost later. Probably the plan was to take all the materials with them. Another important point is that because the tents are in dense rows, visibility of the streets is significantly limited. Such a rapid development of events is rather strange. Maybe they are preparing to receive someone from above, or he is already here. But at the base, there are also several buildings with foundations that look quite strong and well-equipped. The slime asked to shorten the story and bring the demon's thought as close to the point as possible. The demon apologized and explained that he had strayed a bit from the topic. In short, this base is very poorly designed. Thanks to this arrangement, even if they look for an entrance or exit in the order of the buildings, they will not find it right away. It is too dangerous to go out now because they can get lost and even stuck. Either way, the guys don't have much information to save themselves. Come to think of it, they could find some big shot and take him hostage. However, that would be very difficult to pull off. The queen smiled. She supposed that if they knew where the base was, they could probably figure it out. She thought that was a terribly simple guess. The demon was very surprised by this and continued to listen to the queen. The queen turned to the slime and asked him to remove the sealing bracelet because it could help them significantly. A tentacle of slime penetrates the keyhole of the bracelet and opens it. The queen shakes it off with her hand and rejoices that she is finally free. The girl spreads her hands on the ground and leans too close to it. She opens her eyes and casts a tracking spell. In her mind, images of a black background with white outlines immediately appear, which describe the entire structure of the base they are in. Eventually, a general picture and plan of this base is built in her head. After a while, the girl raises her index finger and says that she knows what the boys need to do. Ignis is surprised at how the queen managed to cope with such a difficult task in just one moment. The queen began to draw a simple map with the tip of her tail. The demon was still shocked by her tracking abilities, even without the use of a magic circle. While drawing, the queen explains that she also found a warehouse that looks like a collection of collectibles. They might be able to find her crown or the demon's staff there. The demon smiled happily and said that he thought so too. The boys are incredibly happy that they will no longer have to run unarmed. The queen is firmly convinced that she definitely wants to get her crown back, and expressed her desire to do so as quickly as possible. She drew a plan of the base with her tail. She is absolutely sure that this is what the diagram looks like. She turns to Ignis and asks him if he can figure it out. The demon thought he could handle it. This diagram was all he needed to know. Just maybe he could figure something out with it. After looking at the diagram for a while, he came up with a definite plan of action. The slime demon will patrol the edges, so the queen will always be in the middle of the line, because she has no vision. There are plenty of places to hide in this nasty base, and the pitch-black darkness is perfect for such covert operations. However, open streets can be considered an exception. The slime rolls and that speed is their clear priority. The slime first developed short legs, which, after a second, suddenly increase in size. The slime calls this going into high-speed mode, and instead of small ones, it develops pumped-up, muscular human legs. The demon considered such a trick an abomination, and the slime asks what they are going to do after they receive the cane and crown. According to the map, the building the queen is talking about is located near the entrance. Once they get out of there, they will immediately head in that direction by the shortest route. In any case, time will not wait, and until they get there, they remain completely unarmed. The demon says that when they get it, and he means the staff, then it will be the end of them all. The boys ask each other if they are ready, while the slime skillfully opens the lock. The demon and the queen are already fully prepared. They definitely need to get out of here already. As soon as the cage door opened, the demon, the slime, and the queen ran out of it as fast as they could. The demon said at the end that the boys should not let themselves be seen, and he advised them to act as if a rabbit was moving in the dark. Here, the demon blocks the way and stretches out his arms to the sides. He wants to do some reconnaissance before they go out into the street. After these words, the eye that was on the top of his head jumps out and rolls out onto the road. He considers this the best weapon. The eye begins to glow brightly, indicating that the reconnaissance mode is on. The magic is strengthened, and the eye turns into a body with incredible power, which in turn personifies the Big Eye Daddy. Slime can't believe his eyes and asks if he's the only one who sees this. The demon asks if he's the only one who's serious about the operation. At this moment, 3 bright beams of light fall on the big-eyed daddy. Slime assumes that this is the light from a torch, and it is much brighter than he thought. The eye ran further to inspect the street. After reconnaissance, it raised its thumb up, which could indicate that everything was clear. The big-eyed daddy waved his hand so that the boys would hurry up and run to him faster. The demon thinks that he found something. The eye asks if this could be a treasure, leaving the guys with this question. He expressed his desire to go further. Meanwhile, the slime was scared. He did not think that he, the eye, could speak. The eye began to shrink in size, and the demon wondered why his voice was so high-pitched. The demon takes pains to explain that it is always useful to know the terrain before setting out, and it was a very effective job. The guys easily reached the building, but there was no one there. They wonder if there should be guards there. The demon rushed to the building and told to act according to the plan. He expressed his firm intention to take his staff. Then the queen accepted the instructions for action and began to look for her crown. The slime spread his legs and said that he would definitely help the boys too. The demon agreed with the assumptions and asked the slime and the queen not to lose their vigilance. As soon as they entered the room, the demon called for them to hurry up with the search. The boys set about their work with determination. The demon searches for his staff in the boxes. The queen searches for the crown with the help of her magical powers, and the slime helps the boys. The demon says that there is much more space here than he expected. There are a lot of things in the room, countless bags and boxes of food. The slime goes through the orc bracelets, the dark elf jewelry, the cannibal collar, and the harpy earrings. The slime is surprised at how much the warriors took from them. Meanwhile, the queen complains that the wooden boxes are packed very tightly, and this is very annoying. The demon clutches the treasures in his fist. He notes that 1,000 or 2,000 will definitely not be enough to bring back the defeated, the demon thought. After all, once he had reveled in the mountain of treasures, but now he realized that he was standing on the mountain of fallen warriors. The demon was distracted from his thoughts and turned his attention to the slime. The slime rummaged through the baskets and boxes and found some kind of cane. As it turned out, the cane was a demon's staff. The queen realized that they had managed to find one of the things, and asked if by chance among the things where the slime was, her crown was not. The slime says that the crown was not there, and suggests that if it is not in this room, then they are keeping it somewhere else. The queen cried out in alarm and said that they do not have time to search all the places. The slime then suggests that she use her tracking skill again. She carefully explains that there is a spell cast on this room that prevents her from being tracked. This spell is more powerful, so if she tries to do anything, they'll be in trouble. If a wizard is nearby, he might know they are here, and their magic has a special trace, so they can be easily tracked. The demon immediately understands that the queen is right, because only her magic can be very easily detected. However, they could find out the approximate location of the crown. If something interferes with the tracking spell, it must be used in reverse. The demon says it is difficult, but quite possible to perform. The demon suggests that they can trace where the interference is much stronger. The room they want to hide will emit energy much stronger, but there is a high probability that there will be something valuable there. True, there may be other reasons. The queen accepts the idea and says that it is worth trying. It will be much more effective than just searching at random, because they have little time anyway. The queen agreed to do so. She uses the tracking skill again, when suddenly a second later, a blurry image of a girl appears in the dark fog. She points her finger behind the canvas and suggests that the crown might be here. She notices that it didn't take her long to use the skill. She says that it is like a strong fog around, which covers all the senses. The demon agreed and suggested that it could be because of the fabric. Suddenly, it could have some magical properties. The queen resolutely urged the boys to get down to business. The demon said that she needed to calm down a little. He felt strange feelings on himself, and he definitely didn't like it. The queen moves in the direction she needs and thinks that they are already close. Ignis thinks that the queen does not even imagine that this could be a trap, and urges the queen not to rush. The slime notices a scale lying on the floor, and suddenly the queen's voice is heard from the side saying that she has found it. The demon lifts another curtain and congratulates the queen on finding what she wanted. The queen holds the crown in her hands, and then presses it close to herself. She is glad that she has finally found her crown. The girl puts the crown on her head and straightens it. The queen turns to her friends and says that she has decided to use her prosthetic eye to track people without being detected. The demon responds by saying that he knows what the queen must do. He reminds her of her sister and urges her to think about her. The queen looks away and says that she has already thought about it. She is firmly convinced that they will find her soon. However, the longer they stay here, the more likely it is that they will raise the alarm among the people. Ignis emphasizes that in such a case, it will be very difficult to escape. The demon decides to help the queen and says that he will go with her. The queen, barely holding back her tears, sincerely thanks the demon. She is about to use the tracking skill again, but this time much faster. The queen notices something off to the side and stops for just a moment. The slime notices this and asks where Sister Alicia is. The queen feels like her sister is in this very building. She rejoices at how great a coincidence this is. She throws her hands up in joy and says that they are very lucky, because Alicia is in the next room. The demon scratched the back of his head and asked to hurry, because they cannot lose a drop of time. The queen says that it was very easy to find her sister without any delay. She came to the door and said that she never knew what they could do with her sister in this place. She reaches for the doorknob and turns it. She admits that she can be a bit of a wimp from time to time. But now the queen must show Alicia what a good sister she is. As soon as they entered the room, the demon noticed that the room was pitch dark and had a rather familiar smell. Something fell at Ignis's foot. He bent down and picked up the unfamiliar object. As it turned out, this bracelet looked very familiar, and one shocking detail dawned on him. The queen heard about the demon's discovery and asked him to wait so that she could light the light. The demon shouted at her not to do it. The queen turned on the light. What she saw shocked her. Her lifeless sister was against the wall. Her body with chains was so tortured that it was impossible to describe what she saw in words. Was furious when he saw this picture. He couldn't believe his eyes and all the terrible things they could do to the queen's sister, incomprehensible to any reasonable mind. At this time, the queen, remembering all the happy moments of life with her sister, could not believe what had happened. She fell to the floor and in hope stretched out her hands to her sister's body. She wanted to believe that what she saw was not true. She collected every single scale from Alicia's tail. She promises herself to collect each one and take it with her. While she was collecting the pieces, she said that her sister was her pride. The queen believes that if she does not collect all the scales, her precious sister will be upset. The demon asks her to stop doing this. At this time, the queen screamed hysterically that her sister is still alive, and she can fix everything. She took one scale in her hands and began to say that her magic would definitely be able to fix everything, and her sister would return to her alive and well. Suddenly, the scale from the tail begins to crumble into dust, right in the queen's palm. She looks at her empty hand. The demon bowed his head and looked at the scales. He noticed that they looked so mangled, as if they had been forcibly removed. Each one was charred. Such a thing could not be done with a normal red-hot rod. He begins to notice that it was done from the tip of the tail. It certainly can't be easy to inconvenience someone in such a complicated and difficult way. It must have taken a long time for whoever did these horrible things. The queen suddenly looked distraught. After all, her sister had only been gone for 1 day, and that could only mean that they had been able to do all this to her in such a short and miserable time. The queen looks at the floor. Bitter tears flow from her eyes like a stream, and she is no longer able to control her body and mind. At this time, many words from her sister appear in her head about how great she is, and that they can achieve a lot together. The queen raises her head, and with a hard-won calmness says that they will not be forgiven. She screams again, and a dark liquid flows from her large eyes. The screams resound throughout the room and the surrounding area. The queen begins to use her magic so strongly that the wooden blocks around her break in half, and she begins to spread significant and noticeable traces of her magic to those around her. She promises herself to defeat all enemies. The queen screamed at the top of her lungs. In doing so, she caused a huge flow and surge of energy. With her magic, she caused nearby buildings to be torn to shreds and scattered in different directions. This definitely did not go unnoticed. The demon insistently asked the queen to calm down. He had already begun to think that she had gone mad after all. The The queen had left an irreparable mark after her crazy experiences, since they were in the very center of the human base. The demon reminds them that their main task is still to escape. They still have a full chance to put their plan into action and stay alive. And for this, the queen needs to maintain her much-needed calm. Ignis comes closer to the queen and suggests that she leave the base. The queen barely breathes, holding back. A second later, she swings and with all her might, hits the demon's head with his hand, not wanting to listen to any words spoken in his direction. The queen screamed again, so loudly that her body began to come apart at small seams, leaving cracks. The demon realized that he clearly would not be able to convince her. He concluded that this situation was developing rather badly. The slime immediately understands that the queen has completely lost her mind and her magic has completely gotten out of control and has begun to corrode her. Cracks spread across her body at an incredible speed, which immediately filled with scarlet liquid. The demon carefully takes his staff. He admits that he did not want to do this at all, but he has no other choice. He definitely has to do it. Suddenly, the queen throws her head back and says the spell of sacrifice of the ancient gods. Suddenly, Ignis's magic distracts her from the spell. He prevented the summoning of magic with his staff. Slime asks if it is safe for the demon to absorb the queen's magic, since the demon's staff is sealed. The entire ring on the demon's staff has already begun to glow. Ignis said angrily that he didn't care at all. He considered some seal to be insignificant at the moment because the main thing now was to calm the queen and arrange an operation to successfully free himself from the human base. The magic ball summoned by the queen still continues to grow and fill the space. The slime and the demon think about how she managed to maintain her composure with such a huge, unimaginable amount of magic. Ignis immediately understands that if they don't finish soon, then absolutely every minute brings them closer to defeat. The demon literally prays for the staff to complete its task faster. He is very sorry that everything turned out this way. The queen screamed again with all her might, and red tears streamed down her face. The demon turns to the queen and says that she must live, because the monsters from the fort need her. They need a ruler, a leader, just like the queen. Ignis remembers her sister and says that she certainly would not want the queen to die here in such a way. Meanwhile, the queen listened to this and suffered from the fact that the magic was gradually eating away at her. The queen, exhausted, threw her head up and looked there. Meanwhile, the demon touched her shoulder. He wants to support her and says that it is normal to be angry, but she should not die under any circumstances. During the experience and sympathy, the slime says that more and more people are flocking to this area. It is time for them to leave. The demon hears the slime's advice and says that it is better for the creature to go with the queen. Slime asks with interest what the demon is going to do. The demon knocks the tip of his staff on the ground and a magic circle immediately appears in that place. Ignis expresses a clear desire to stay. The slime doesn't believe what he sees. The demon used a spatial displacement spell, and in this case he can't go with them. The demon carefully explains that spatial movement without preparing tools cannot bring far, so he will have to stop people. In addition, the queen's magic leaves a trace. Ignis carefully explains that the queen is now deprived of her magic, and he has absorbed quite a lot. Every time she uses her magic, people will be able to track the queen and catch them. The slime immediately realizes that the demon planned this outcome in advance. Ignis reminds him that he does not want to do this and asks the slime if he believes him. While people were already beginning to cautiously gather in the place of a large concentration of magic, the demon again recalls the very significant words of the slime. Slime said that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and they are needed so that everyone can find their place in this world. The demon thinks that he has found this place. He throws himself down like a stone. Slime asked him to wait, but he did not listen. The demon turns mentally to the slime and thinks that this journey has taught him that the demon knows nothing, that he has created nothing. In this life, he has created nothing. In this life, he has only robbed and conquered. He has realized that he was a bad king. However, that's not all. After this conclusion, a huge explosion is heard, which is noticed by all the people in the area. They look in fear towards the source of magic and think that an earthquake has occurred. In any case, they are firmly convinced that something has happened. People assume that demons are on the loose. People began to hurry and quickly prepare for the attack. At this time, the demon takes on his true form. On each of his fingers, he had a ring. Along his spine, he had a huge ridge with ribs facing outward. The demon immediately understands that he once used this power only for himself. However, now Ignis uses this power for the good of his people. The demon has become simply incredible in size, literally several times larger and taller than the buildings that were in the base. He decides that patience has come to an end. The demon says that he is evil, rage, fear, and ultimately the one who will unite the demons at the end of time. His name is Ignis, the king of demons. Ignis the demon took on a terribly frightening appearance. The demon stepped forward. He spoke rudely to the people and promised to erect the tombstone on the grave of their despair. He let out a loud cry. Meanwhile, one of the men was lying in bed. He was not sleeping. There were sounds of an argument coming from the side. They assumed that the demon had gotten free. The man got out of bed. He did not immediately understand how it was possible to sleep in such noise. He began to put on his armor and did not believe that this could be the most reliable outpost. He puts on his gloves, cape, and equips himself with the rest of his items. He decides to add another demon to his collection. At this time, the queen was imprisoned in a protective barrier, which should send her and the slime to another place. The slime immediately understands that the demon wants to defeat the people alone. The slime wonders why Ignis is so reckless. Later, he remembers his words that he finally found his place. Slime began to wonder why the demon would pretend to be someone he is not. Meanwhile, the demon impartially strikes each of the people he meets on his way. He is fighting hard. Behind him were mountains of people. Suddenly, a command was heard from the side to begin the shelling. Countless arrows rushed into the demon's body. He considered this not an attack at all, and thought that people were complete fools. As soon as Ignis brought his hand out, he commanded the people to bow their heads. Not all the people understood the order at first, as a moment later their helmets began to squeeze with such force that some felt their heads being squeezed. Due to such a violent pain, they still had to bow their heads. Ignis thinks that it takes a lot of energy to maintain this body made of magic. If he does not use the magic carefully, it will run out without a single delay. Ignis, the demon king. Ignis wonders if he will have time to destroy everything, or if it is better to use self-destruction. In any case, he needs to hurry. Suddenly, Ignis clutches several fence posts in his hands to launch another attack on the people. He throws these rods like spears, and they crash into the ground with great force and create quite strong shockwaves. Ignis, the demon king, resorts to chaos magic, the technique of the eternal. As soon as he cast this spell, the ground beneath the feet of people began to shake. Suddenly, stakes began to grow from under the ground at great speed, so that some of them literally pierced people's armor. These stakes formed a fence of victims. The demon looks at this and immediately understands that there will be nothing complicated about this. The remaining people looked at him with fear. One of them shouted that they cannot retreat and need to move forward. The demon turns his attention to the one who gave the order and says that he is quite brave since he is not afraid of him. He turns his attention to this soldier and immediately understands that he is clearly different from the others and notices a familiar face in him. Meanwhile, the base general slowly approaches the demon king. The general noticed that the demon was having fun while he was sleeping. He asks if Ignis, the demon king, is ready for the consequences. He promises to make a carpet out of the demon Ignis. As it turns out, the king of the base is Vargas, a knight of the Holy King and the United Kingdom of Western Tamalia. The base leader begins to brandish his weapon and admits that defeating the demon will bring him nothing but pleasure. He swings his weapon and is about to attack with his fiery spear, which is called Inoxis. Suddenly, his attack is stopped by the hand of a demon. The man does not immediately understand what could have stopped his attack. A moment later, the man flew with great force into the tower that stood by the fence. The head of the base was clearly unhappy that he had not managed to get out, but was already crushed. The demon, hearing that the man was still talking, asked if he was still whole. Vargas carefully gets up on both feet and swings his spear again, attacking with a flaming spear, a nimble technique of the mad dance of the fire lion. First, he points the spear towards the demon, and then spins it above his head, summoning hundreds of flames. Vargas strikes with great force with his spear, which is literally imbued with magic. However, it is also impossible to defeat the demon with such a blow. In short, the demon admits that it is stupid, and a person will not be able to put him down. The head of the base says that it was magic, which is even difficult to pronounce. so he doesn't have enough power. The man starts running. The demon looks after him and asks if he is scared and if he is going to run away. The man, gaining magic, began to continuously release charges of fire towards the demon. It turned out to be an attack to make it possible to blind the demon. Ignis thinks that a human cannot defeat him with this, and guessed what the base leader had in mind. At that time, the man had already begun to carry out his plan. Suddenly, bright rays began to glow above the demon's head. As it turned out, a magic circle appeared in the sky. Ignis immediately understands that the man used this spear to draw a magic circle from above. However, the demon does not immediately understand what the man was going to do with a spell of such a scale, because it would certainly destroy his entire base. Ignis assumed that the man was going to destroy himself as well. The man, having finished drawing the magic circle, firmly placed the spear in the ground. He turns to the Lord and asks for his forgiveness, because he has sinned. The man confesses that he is a servant of the flame, a servant of God, and he believes that he will guide the man on the true path, even if his strength is exhausted. The man promises himself to continue this prayer and calls on God to come down from heaven and destroy his enemy. Vargas penetrates the magic circle with his spear deeper and deeper and asks the Lord to hear him and forgive him for all his sins. The man summons the spell Flame of Akchandra and sharply presses the spear into the magic circle. Meanwhile, a huge attack appears from the magic circle in the sky. A huge blade landed on the ground. The man did what he had planned. The demon's body literally crumbled into pieces. As it turned out, this was a powerful blow with a huge area. It seemed that the demon had come to an end. Ignis, the demon king, admits that the magic circle was also used to limit the attack area, but he didn't know that there were so many strong enemies besides the heroes. Ignis admits with genuine sincerity that after such an attack, his body has approached the limit of its capabilities, but he cannot retreat no matter what, because it is still too early for him to be defeated. The demon uses the last of his magic and turns into a new creature. The man does not believe his eyes and asks what is happening here. Suddenly, the demon turns into a black creature with a simply huge, unimaginable tail. Now he looks more like a lizard of unimaginable shape and with simply huge, unimaginable, and inconceivable dimensions. He turns to the man and says that he is still alive, and he simply cannot be defeated in such a simple way. Once again, a tense battle between the demon Ignis and the base leader. Suddenly, Vargas decides to make a sharp and unexpected attack in a jump. As soon as he swung his sword, the image of the demon appears behind him and immediately strikes back. The man again resorts to a continuous attack from the magical spheres, but thanks to his enormous speed, the demon skillfully dodges them without a single hesitation. Ignis, the demon king, was much quicker than Vargas thought. The base leader thought that by using enormous force, he would finish everything in an instant. He would cause much less damage than if he had to walk around here and chill. He wonders if his plan was pointless. Vargas turns to Ignis and asks what kind of metamorphosis he uses during battle. The man addresses his subordinate. The soldier immediately stood at attention and expressed his readiness to obediently carry out the orders of his master Vargas. Vargas said that they must take the demon away from here. The soldier must convey that the 1st and 3rd units will lure him into a trap, and the 4th and 5th units will ambush him. The remaining soldiers need to be sent to put out the fires, as this matter has already gone too far. The warrior pulls his sword out of its sheath and places the butt on the ground. He decides to start hunting the wolves. Vargas jumps with great force and swings his sword with the firm belief that he will be able to reach the demon. Meanwhile, Ignis instantly rushed past him, and after a few moments began to run towards him to deliver another attack. The warrior notices this and immediately changes the space to crawl out from another place and get ahead of his cunning attack. Ignis, the demon king, notices that the man is using advanced technology such as magic platforms. He thinks that if this is truly the limit of human speed, he will hardly be able to catch him at this rate. Suddenly, a row of soldiers stood resolutely before the demon. The men pointed their spears at Ignis and said that he could go no further in the name of their holy king. Ignis, the demon king, immediately understands that they still have a small army, but if they catch him by surprise, everything will be very bad. During this ambush, Vargas attacks again and lands an attack with his sword right in front of the demon's nose. The demon again uses his speed to escape the attacks, and the man says that he will not be able to escape him and his destiny. Suddenly, at one moment, the demon bumps his forehead into a spear. As it turned out, the soldiers had prepared another ambush for him around the corner. The warriors took up fighting stances and were about to begin their joint attack with spears. They pierced the demon with their spears at once. As soon as they received counterblows in their backs from the magical bodies that were made from the Demon King's tail in 1 second, Vargas lowers his head and realizes that today is a bad day for soldiers like him. He swings his sword again and tries to reach the demon. Attack after attack, and he gets closer and closer to the creature, when suddenly he impales it with the very tip of the blade. Ignis was pierced by a normal warrior and began to spin his spear. While the demon was distracted by the unexpected attack, Vargas used all her power and strength to deliver another powerful blow. Meanwhile, the tail wrapped around the soldier's head, who attacked with a spear. Ignis, the Demon King, threw the soldier towards Vargas, knocking them both to the ground. Ignis, the Demon King, ran away again. Ignis immediately understands that the people's plan is very banal. Although, despite this, they are even smarter than he thought. Vargas not only has strength, but also uses tricks. He is definitely a man who turns ordinary people into elites. However, fighting the demon on his territory is too disadvantageous, and we need to get out of here. Vargas considers it positive that the demon has escaped. After all, he can deal with it. He gave the order to the soldiers to do everything possible to put out the fire. The soldier who was given the order thought that Ignis had used so much force that it would be quite difficult to put out the fire. The soldier relays the order to the others, and they respond that it looks like there is no longer any need to put out the fire. Perhaps the wood was damp or something, so most of the flames died out before they could be put out. They say the fire flared up, but mysteriously did not spread any further. An attack flies into the fence, smashing all the beams to pieces. There is practically nothing left of the fence. It turned out to be a strong fight between the Demon King and the base leader. They were on par, their attacks intertwined like complex knots. Vargas lunged forward and gathered all his energy to strike the demon. Ignis only managed to dodge and became a support on the ground. Vargas strikes blow after blow, and the demon finds the situation rather stupid. However, his body falls to the ground. Ignis knows that a body formed by magic will not last long. His hands begin to tremble from powerlessness. If he tries to escape, Vargas will attack him from behind, and there is no point in that. The demon comes to the conclusion that one of them must be defeated. Ignis urges himself to focus, because he must not make a single mistake. It's either victory or defeat. There is no third option. His tail releases powerful attacks towards Vargas. The man dodges Ignis's attacks with his sword. He grabs the demon's tail and yanks it towards him so hard that the demon no longer has any support under its feet. Vargas kicks the monster in the jaw. Ignis immediately realizes that he can't fall here. Vargas takes his sword and calls on the demon to accept his defeat and deals him what seems to be the final attack. After Vargas's attack, a bright light appears behind him, which splits the demon into small pieces. The demon's body falls to the ground. The man believes that now this will be over with. On the ground lay only an incomprehensible mass of magic and a demon mask. Suddenly, something resembling a demon's head began to emerge from this mass. He began to gradually emerge from this mass and noticed that the man was mistaken. After all, the battle was just beginning. The man bursts into hysterical laughter. After all, the demon has pestered him again in his usual guise. The man cannot believe what he sees, because he does not believe that the true form of the demon could be that huge thing. Vargas says that from the demon's appearance, one cannot even tell that he is a monster because he looks more like a pile of bones. The man grins and says that this day is full of surprises. After all, first that scary little snake suddenly appeared in front of him. Now the bone clown is showing him a trick. It's such a pity to win even a little time. The demon, hearing the mention of the terrible snake, asked if Vargas meant Lamia. The man asks in response whether he knew that devil and smiles disgustingly. Memories of the queen's sister, who, unfortunately, could not be saved, immediately appeared in his head. Vargas explains that they caught her by chance near the fort. He had a lot of fun with her because, as it turned out, the girl harmed herself so as not to give out any unnecessary information. Vargas summons magic into his palm and admits that he likes to break such people from the inside, and began to describe in detail all the actions regarding Lamia. Having done everything he had planned, he finally did the girl a favor, meaning sexual intercourse. He turns to the demon and asks, calling him a knuckle, if he can show him something interesting. At this time, Ignis, the king of demons, rests his staff on the ground. This foreshadowed the beginning of some kind of magic. He calls a flame and says that he is far from being a clown. He calls him into his world and asks him to dance in this round dance of life and death, for there is not a single spectator here. He says that man will suffer, just like the queen's sister. Vargas is not particularly impressed and asks if this is the demon's secret plan. After all, he is only experiencing heat, and this flame will not even burn him, and is unlikely to cause any harm in general. The man immediately guesses what the demon is trying to do. Vargas assumes that Ignis, the demon king, is going to stall for time, and all this so that their queen could escape from the human base and try to stay alive after such a breakdown and release of her magic. Vargas pulled out his sword in front of him and said that he would not allow himself to be tricked, and that he would defeat the demon, and eventually his skull would be used as a wine cup. Both begin their attack, and the demon admits that Vargas's arrogance will be his undoing. A fierce battle began. Vargas gathered all his strength, swung and attacked the demon. He was about to swing a second time, but the demon king's strong hand stopped his attack. Vargas does not immediately understand what is going on, because he thinks that the demon fights like a woman. The demon, having received the attack, immediately understands that the difference is even greater than he thought, because he cannot stay on his feet. However, he still does not plan to retreat. Sharply objected, summoning the Chaos Demon and standing on the support again. At this time, Vargas deprives Ignis of his hand and without a drop of pity wounds him in the shoulder. He makes it clear that the demon is giving up his positions in the battle due to a decline in strength. After this attack, the man was already on the ground. He says that he knew that it would be like this. In any case, to his great regret, he did not manage to have fun for long, and the head of the base was even a little upset by this outcome of the battle. Then Ignis, the Demon King, decides to take the man by surprise. He picks up his broken horn from the ground and immediately understands that this is literally his only chance to win. He gathers his strength, full of determination to act. At the moment when the man raises his shield, it is necessary to strike in his blind spot, namely, a small hole, which is only enough for a sharp and thin object. Ignis waited for the moment and already began to attack. But Vargas noticed this and realized that the enemy decided to play dirty. However, this is not enough to defeat him. The man warns precisely that he will not be able to win and that he is not finished yet. Suddenly, a spear fragment flies into Vargas's back. The demon gets to his feet, saying that he has finally decided to use his second horn. However, for a human, this is not enough. Vargas admits that the demon was defeated for him already at the moment when he stood before him. He again pointed the blades of his sword towards Ignis and told him not to be upset. Vargas said the proverb with a furious look and again began to make a series of merciless attacks. Ignis could only dodge them, but his attempts were not entirely successful. Suddenly, Vargas swings his fist and hits the demon with all his might. He flies to the ground and lies down, no longer able to resist. When the demon was already lying on the ground without the slightest hope of moving, Vargas dealt him several more consecutive blows. Ignis, the Demon King, spread his sword and tried to call upon magic, but his hand was immediately defeated by Vargas. The fight is still going on. Vargas delivers a decisive blow, and the demon lets out a huge scream. The man calls the demon's attention to the fact that the man stands above him. Vargas carefully explains that the demon is weak. Even his tricks could not bring him victory. He says that Ignis is at the very bottom, and calls him a clown. The demon screams loudly and shrilly and asks the man to shut up. He calls him to battle again and again. He explains with anger and fury in his soul that Vargas will be the first person whom he will burn to the ground completely without the slightest sadness or regret, which the head of the base is simply not worthy of. Vargas turns to the demon again and asks if he can hear him well. The man doesn't have time to finish speaking before long. Seemingly scorching, cruel, and merciless tongues of flame rush into his face, literally blinding him with their bright light. With his sword, he raises a sphere of fire and says that it will not pass. Vargas explains that he and the demon have the same flame, and it is quite easy to notice. With one movement of the sword, he directs the sphere of fire straight towards the demon. Ignis pulls his sword into the ground and screams loudly and shrilly again, calling for the sphere to collapse. The staff fulfills the demon's order, and after that it emits rays of magic. The demon withstands the onslaught of the fireball and sends the man. The demon raises his staff and says the human fire will not go any further. but his attention is distracted by something to the side. The man still holds the fiery ball on the tip of his sword and asks what the demon will say about this. With his magic, he summons the same balls as Ignis, but in larger quantities. He asks Ignis's opinion about what he saw with genuine interest. Ignis, the Demon King, couldn't say a word. In an instant, a multitude of fireballs fell upon him. The attacks fell with such force that the dust literally stood in the column, and stones flew in all directions. The man was sure that this was the end of the long battle. There was not a single wet spot left of the demon. Vargas hoped that this was exactly what the Knuckle wanted. The demon withstands the onslaught of crazy attacks, rises again and again, leaning on his staff, and says that the first part of the show is already over, and it is high time to move on to the second part. Ignis, the Demon King, is gaining strength again, as if rising from the burning ashes. He says that it is finally his turn to act. He confidently heads towards the head of the base, one of the 6 saints. Vargas noted that the demon was quite persistent. He said that he was tired of listening to Ignis talk about trivialities, and urged him to stop his meaningless might about battles and fighting and just accept defeat. The warrior explains that he only needs to make a simple swing of the sword and a deft cut that does not require much effort, and everything will be over with the demon. Vargas makes a confident lunge forward with one leg, pulling the sword out of its sheath, and delivers a sharp and accurate blow. Vargas realizes that the demon is defeated in strength, defeated in tactics, and his unfortunate tricks are not capable of changing anything, no matter how hard the creature tries to overcome him. The warrior began to attack again without stopping, hoping to finally deal with the annoying demon. Suddenly, from under the ground with the help of magic, Ignis deftly thrusts his hand with a spear. When suddenly he wounds the warrior in the face with the tip, Vargas tried to make an attack, but, however, he could not hit the enemy. It was as if he flew past his enemy. The demon appears and asks whether a person can't overcome just half a step and reach him, because it's not that difficult to defeat some demon when such a wonderful opportunity is presented. Ignis, the Demon King, reminds Vargas, the fireman, of his own words about how they are on completely different levels. Ignis, the Demon King, caught Vargas off guard and summoned the long-awaited and surefire primordial explosion technique. The demon calls upon a spell to dissolve flesh and explode. Suddenly, at one moment, the area around the warrior began to explode, and pieces flew in absolutely all directions. Vargas admits that the demon did take him by surprise. However, this will not change anything, and will not affect the outcome of the battle, which, in the warrior's opinion, was already predetermined from the very beginning. Vargas swings his sword, and with simply enormous, unimaginable force and pressure, he delivers a fiery attack with his sword. A stream of magic rushes towards the demon. Vargas is furiously desiring to defeat the creature. Suddenly, in the place where the demon stood, a large explosion occurred, the light from which literally blinded and did not allow one to clearly follow what was happening. The man can't understand what it was. As it turned out, Ignis, the Demon King, was stubbornly kneeling, clouds of dust and remnants of magic flying around him. The demon turns to the man, and believes that he is immensely surprised that he did not touch him. Vargas immediately realizes that the demon blocked his attack with a wall of fire and asks his opponent for clarification. Vargas claims that the demon's wall would not even have enough power to contain even a portion of the outer flame of his sun. Ignis asks if the warrior wishes to see something interesting. The demon asks to look at the wall of fire with greater attention. The warrior is sure that the demon has already noticed one detail that it just can't go unnoticed after all. Ignis, the Demon King, explains with great passion that this flame, the original fire, consumes absolutely all other fire without distinction. And he reminds us that it all started with Vargas's attack, who tried so hard to win by using magical fire techniques. The demon says that from the moment Vargas set fire to his fort, he mixed with its fire. Until now, he remains in such a state to control this fire. Now Ignis, the Demon King, is definitely the master of this fire. The demon notices that Vargas is not as amused as before, because all this time he was fighting only one fireball. Now the man will be hit by absolutely all the power of the flame, and he will not be able to defeat the elements. He simply does not have the stamina to withstand a series of powerful attacks. Vargas does not immediately understand that, whether mixing fire can be called ordinary magic, it is definitely beyond the bounds of reason. While the man was figuring out the possibilities of mixing types of fire in magic and thinking about what kind of magic this could be attributed to, the desire to continue the battle took over. The demon wanted to continue his explanation, but Vargos shamelessly interrupted him and said that for him this was far from a reason to give up. He again took a fighting stance, getting to his feet with great effort. Vargos admits that Ignis, the Demon King, is quite a nice guy, and hopes that his opponent understands him right away. Vargos tries to break through the firewall and says that he is proud of his belonging to the Six Saints. The demon accepts his words and takes action. A huge explosion is heard behind the Demon King, which exceeds him in size by an insane number of times. Vargos starts screaming loudly and shrilly. He reminds Ignis that he is one of the Six Saints, and no one can defeat him. No one has enough power to defeat any of the Six Saints. He is firmly convinced that he will not make ends meet in this insignificant duel. Suddenly, a huge flame is heard around, which engulfs absolutely everything around. A huge whirlwind rose up, from which screams were heard. The demon asks how he is there. He feels as if the air is being sucked out of his whole body. He clutches an unusual object in his hands and asks to taste the queen's fury. Vargos still finds the strength to avoid the attack, gets to his feet, and calls upon the full power of his, as it may seem at first glance, boundless and powerful magic. The man becomes furious. He says that if someone defeats one, he will defeat 10. If someone defeats 100 people, he will defeat 1,000. He explains this by saying that he is Vargos, the Fire Lion, and will never retreat. A huge explosion appears at the battle site. This definitely means that the man has taken on his form of ultimate power. Stone growths and armor appeared on Vargos's body. He himself grew so much that he became larger than the demon. Meanwhile, Ignis, the Demon King, falls to his knees, exhausted, his staff his only support. His mana is gone, and he can't move a finger. The warrior slowly approaches him. Vargos addresses the demon Ignis. The man speaks in a creepy voice about how fire will not burn him, because he himself in his true essence and appearance is fire. Vargos wanted to make a decisive attack, but suddenly it seemed as if he turned to stone. His sword began to crack and crumble into small pieces. The man was too tired to fight. He thought that he was pathetic. His figure began to gradually fade away. After all, they fought and fought. In the end, there was nothing left. Until the very end, Vargos continued to be used. However, he is glad that he was able to do everything in his power. Vargos admits his defeat, but he considers the battle glorious. He turns to Ignis and asks him if he can do it 5 more times. The sun rises and shines its bright rays on Vargos's back. He tells the demon that after his defeat, the remaining 6 saints will make their move. He presents the demon with a choice, to be afraid or to fight bravely. The man continues to say that the demon can be proud of his victory. He addresses him as the Sorcerer King and encourages him to give the others a worthy rebuff. Another demon, Gwen, appears from behind the horizon. He amazes with his impressive size. He turns his attention to the staff, which was glowing almost above his head. The Orc Lord takes the staff in his hands and notices that its shape has undoubtedly changed. He is firmly convinced that there is something he should have checked earlier. Something that has been bothering him even before this furious battle with losses began. The demon put his hand to his chest. Not far away, you can see the end of his robe fluttering in the wind. The unknown person says that they waited a very long time for the demon. As it turned out, the king had arrived. The demon picks up Ignis, fitting him completely into his palm. The king turns to him and notices that despite caring for him, he still continues to walk the tightrope. The Orc Lord, Gwen, recognizes Ignis and is certain that it was him then, without the slightest doubt. He turns to the fire dancer and asks if he has any other matters to work on carefully. He says that compared to his friend, he has lost too much memory and notes that he had a rather difficult time. A voice is heard saying that Gwen and Ignis will be helped, but in exchange they must avoid fighting. One of the creatures suggests that if Ignis is so weak, then his strength and memory must be returned. Another objected that they could die in such a situation. The creature expresses its regret and says that this is quite a thorny path. Gwen, the Orc Lord, carefully explains that no matter how low he has fallen, he will never change his mind and will not regret this choice. The newcomer says that if Gwen, the Orc Lord, regains his strength, he will certainly find what he desires. However, a deadly fight is inevitable. Gwen, the Orc Lord, is instructed that if anything goes wrong, he must take Ignis and flee without giving them a chance to be discovered. The fire dancer, having wished good luck, instantly disappeared from the field, just as without a single delay as he had appeared on it, and left behind only high clouds of dust. Gwen, the Orc Lord, notices the fragment of Argus' shield. The Orc King looks at the warrior's shield with concern and immediately guesses that it, too, was trapped and damaged. The Orc King assumes that the warriors are probably tired, and with genuine sincerity wishes them rest. He honors the memory of the fallen hero. Gwen, the Orc Lord, immediately realizes that the situation is much more serious than they previously thought. They definitely have to revive him. Gwen, the Orc Lord, thinks that everything is accelerated so much that they can no longer hide the facts because it has already reached its limit. Meanwhile, a guy is watching what is happening. He is firmly convinced that the powers that be will definitely notice this, and the blind prisoners are about to open their eyes. The guy goes from one tree, behind which he was hiding, to another tree, and notices a two-handed sword wrapped in cloth and inserted deep into the ground nearby. It turned out to be the grave of Dre, the hero, rebel or fool. He was the only hero who did not submit to the will of God at all, and tried to coexist with the demons. On the one hand, he was questioning his beliefs about how the world worked. While the boy was thinking about this, he firmly grabbed the hilt of the sword. But then again, maybe Dre was thinking the same thing as him. Suddenly, the guy suddenly pulls the sword out of the ground. If his assumptions are correct, then this man's footprint could be a clue to what's wrong with the guy. He believes that if his thought is just a stupid idea, then it is destined to be. The people the boy has met, their approval. If the boy's path is wrong, then he doesn't even need to see God. He puts the sword on the ground, and it begins to glow. The anxiety the boy felt at the time made no sense. He hoped with genuine sincerity that he was wrong. The guy immediately remembers different moments from his life. How he met people, how he protected the elf from the man's attacks, and how he stopped his attack with one movement of his palm. The man immediately began to apologize and asked to pay attention to that child because the demon was just a small, rotten, dark elf. The boy with disheveled hair and torn clothes sat on the ground and looked pitifully into the distance. The boy accepts the changes, and the man of dreams turns to the elf, showing his fist, and orders him to apologize to the master because he put the man in front of him in a bad light. The boy approaches the guy and falls to his knees in front of him. He bows his head and asks for forgiveness for his existence. He adds that if the guy had not intervened, he would no longer exist. The boy began to scream hysterically. He screamed that he did not know how to make amends for his guilt. He said that if the boy wanted, he could do whatever he wanted with him. The boy was shocked by such words and could not say anything in response. The boy still asked for punishment and the opportunity to regret that he was alive. Meanwhile, the man stood behind the boy and watched the process. He asked the gentleman not to hold back and do whatever he wanted. The guy says that this is too much for him, and instead he is going to ask one question, if the man doesn't mind. The man says that everything is fine, and the gentleman does not need to apologize to him, and especially not to the elf. The guy asks him if the man did the same to a person, because the elf boy looks very much like a person. The man twisted his face in genuine horror and grabbed his head with his hands as if he had just committed the most mortal sin of all that existed in this world. He admitted that doing such a thing to a person was terrible. The man admits that he would never have even thought of such a terrible thing. He turns to the boy and says that he is completely different. He explains this by saying that the more you hurt, the more your heart burns with justice. The boy asks if this dark elf has dealt with anyone. The man refuses. He asks what difference it makes if a demon does not need a reason for such treatment. The man expressed a desire to deal with the elf before he speaks. The man again twisted his face into a nasty smile and asked the boy not to worry, because he would not tell his mother anything. He also asked him not to forget who fed him. The boy was shocked by such a change in the man's mood. A few moments later, the man was already digging a deep hole to clean up what he had done. It was from that day on that the boy began to doubt. Not only that, man, it didn't matter how many saints the boy met. He immediately understands that when it comes to demons, hatred definitely takes over. This was the first time that the desire to do justice was awakened. It doesn't matter what country you're from, what race you are, or even if you're a child who's never met a demon. These values were shared by everyone. First of all, the boy was raised to treat everything with compassion, nobility, and love. And he himself feels great hatred for demons. The guy wipes the sweat from his face. Just the thought that demons are at every step, as if manipulating the guy. He digs a hole and wonders how it happened that only this hero got out of there, because there is definitely something here. Suddenly, the boy feels a powerful surge of energy behind him. He turns around and sees a huge figure. At the top of a steep cliff stood the miraculously reborn hero. A knight in plate armor appeared before the hero, from under whose helmet came speech in an incomprehensible language. The next second he fell to his knees, and blood was dripping from his mouth. The guy was worried about the knight's condition and offered his help, but he only said something furiously and incomprehensibly, and the blood pouring out of his mouth increased. And then the sword in his hands began to emit a bright glow. The hero, not understanding what was happening, covered his eyes with his hands when the knight began to scream from a wound that appeared in his chest, bleeding from several parts of his body. At that moment, when blood began to flow like a stream through his gauntlets, he clenched his hand into a fist, gathering his strength. The knight took up a position, holding his sword at the ready, and the hero at this time could only reflect on the power he had seen. It seemed very strange to him. Immediately after, calling upon the sword, he asked to grant him strength, and, calling upon white lightning, attacked the enemy standing in front of him. While making an attack, he noticed how lightning was clearly emanating from his opponent's weapon, which greatly surprised the hero. The next thing the knight did was activate the electric sword's purple death skill, which the youth noticed was very similar to his own skill. The man, directing a clot of energy from the tip of his fingers at the guy, threw it as a lightning ball of spell, taking the attack upon himself. The hero, falling, could not help but notice that his opponent was a strong monster, and wondered who was hiding behind that helmet. At this time, he jumped into the attack, and, unleashing another lightning-fast attack, brought the young man down to the ground with a force that threw the earth in different directions as he fell. While the hero was confused by what was happening and tried to at least defend himself, the knight, without wasting time, used the triple strike of white lightning, purple sword, attacking with the skill five-fold splash. The blow dealt to the area was enormous, after which the hero noticed that all the movements of the attacker were similar to his own. In addition, they were even better. The guy couldn't believe that he was cornered, but he didn't have time to hesitate. So he took a fighting stance, summoned a stream of light around his body and under the knight's gaze, concentrated on what was happening. He realized that he couldn't do without magic and decided to go to the very end. The strength and skill that his opponent demonstrated, he had seen before only during the battle with the Demon King. While the knight was speaking in an incomprehensible language, the youth called upon his fellow giants of old, wishing that they would show their fury. He demanded that they crush the bones of the enemy, make his blood boil and destroy him. Using the skill, Thunder King White Lightning, the hero made a completely straight cut and defeated his enemy. Having finished the fight, the knight spoke in a language that the hero already understood. Realizing that the hero had already defeated the Demon King and assumed that the young man had come to this place because he felt strange, he also warned that it was definitely not too late to go back, noting that he shouldn't have thought about this world, causing a look of misunderstanding on the hero's face. But he also understood that even though he said these words to the guy, he was not going to listen to him, just like his kind. The hero did not understand who he was talking about, but when he asked about it, the knight only said that this question was wrong. He asked the young man how many times he could be resurrected, and whether he saw what actually happens to the things and people he once protected. The knight revealed that wealth, honor, and special abilities were just an illusion, and that brave heroes were just guardians of livestock. And, once again repeating that, if he was satisfied with this world, he should have turned around and closed his eyes to everything that was happening and had happened. The defeated warrior said that if the hero was still going to go over to their side, he would lose everything. Having thus warned him, he said goodbye to him, and then went to another world, cursing the arrogant gods, and some kind of amulet flew into the air. The hero, looking at the decoration that fell from the knight, was, among other things, sure that his recent actions were a very brave deed. He was indignant, noting that this is exactly what usually happens to such brave warriors, because of just one mistake. The world as the boy knew it collapsed before his eyes. The young man, falling to the ground, grabbing the grass with his hands, moaned from a strange feeling, not understanding what had happened recently. Some time ago, a demon stood in the middle of the desert. Different fragments of memories flashed through his head as he lamented how long everything lasted. Remembering that everyone had died, he wondered how many months had passed since then, and also how long he could contain his condition. But this time, the demon knew he had to protect everyone, otherwise they could die. The monster realized that the stakes were too high, and that something had to be done about it, which made him lament how he had gotten to this point in his life. Remembering that all this time, he had been selfish. His reasoning was interrupted by armed opponents surrounding him. Noticing their presence, he only said that he was tired of everything and of people. Sometime later, someone tried to wake the hero. It was the slime demon, who was surprised how his interlocutor could sleep so peacefully after everything he had done. The ball of slime complained, standing in the middle of the room, that the main character could not solve all the problems on his own. Believing that he was only making fun of him, the demon said that if the firehead had not found him, the hero would have already passed away. He could only ask for forgiveness for making him worry. Slime also shared that he was so worried that at that time his body looked like cheese with holes, in response to which, his interlocutor asked why he had shrunk so much, assuming that it was all because of those same worries. Not understanding what he was talking about, the slime told the monster that he himself had changed and asked him to look in the mirror. Seeing the reflection, the demon was surprised by his size. He completely changed his shape. Slime, showing his body, explained that he had previously been much smaller, involuntarily surprising him with what complex forms he could transform into. After learning what he looked like, the former Demon King paid many compliments to his stern, dignified face and beautiful body shape like a large wolf, even suggesting that this was the next stage of his evolution. But not wanting to watch this, the slime demanded not to become arrogant, although he noted that in any case, his jokes were better than the queen's arrogance. Remembering her, the main character asked if everything was okay with her, to which the slime did not undertake to answer. And after some thought, he suggested simply going to the queen, while he would tell her on the way where they were and what was happening around them. Afterwards, they went to the publication, in which one of the demons was loudly cursing out loud, since he could no longer stand the fact that everyone came to say hello except the hero and the slime. When the demons entered their building, he was outraged that they looked down on him. His partner, another skeletal demon, explained that he was a guest of the queen and that he was even more important than all their elders. The recently angry McKinner, hearing this, thought about it. He could not understand how the demon who appeared on the threshold could be more important than him. He visualized his understanding of hierarchy as a pyramid. At the very bottom was the errand boy. In the middle were his friends, and at the top was his teacher. Hearing this, the slime declared that they were much higher than this pyramid, even higher than his teacher. The Demon King, admitting that he had achieved nothing and did not even know about this place, asked them to be silent when the skeleton spoke. He introduced himself as Atasha, talked about his partner, and suggested that the new arrivals had had a difficult day. The demon recalled how in the past it was impossible to be drawn into battle while traveling, and concluded that the world was already rotten. In his opinion, it began with the defeat of the Demon King, and despite his tyranny, he was sure that he was missed, although his departure was predetermined. The skeleton continued, clarifying that the place where they were was once an abandoned human castle. Now it had been renovated and turned into a communal settlement. The castle was inhabited by winged demonic harpies, earth-burrowing worms, and undead. All these creatures were driven out of their homes and formed a settlement. Fortunately, it was well protected and deserted. Slime noted that they were now part of the settlement too, and the skeleton continued, claiming that the queen had been kind to him and he had kept in touch with the fort. Thus, he was sure that she would not despise him, and suggested that they meet with the chief. The former Demon King agreed to the offer, as long as it was only a greeting. When he wanted to clarify where to go, McKinner, who had previously shown aggression, offered to show him the way, trying to be as helpful as possible. Some time later, the Demon King came to the meeting, where he saw the head of the castle. It was a crow-like demon with 3 heads, who thanked the hero for his attention. The main character was confronted by the lord of the ruined castle, Yatanoel, each of whose heads was asking the same question about why certain events had occurred. In response to a question about the specificity of what was said, he continued, telling that the situation had been getting worse recently. He was worried about whether he would be able to get through all this. And then he started complaining that he was made the main one only because he was smart, but he was just reading a book. Even his number of heads was only so he could read more. Yatanoel was sure that he was not fit to be the leader, and would not be able to cope with what was happening, especially when people were moving in strange directions and the castle was becoming restless. The main character asked what exactly happened to the people, to which the lord of the castle told him about how they were going in a large army and combing the entire country, and the number of troops was only growing. People were recruiting especially rapidly around the area of the frontline bases. Yatanoel assumed that there was a reason for this. Then the former demon king approached him, asking if he knew anything about the sixth Saint Vargas. His interlocutor remembered that the saint was called the Fiery Lion, and in addition to being ridiculously strong, he was also incredibly cruel. The chief also heard that he possessed some special abilities, similar to those of a hero. After listening to these thoughts to the end, the main character said that when he was at the base, he accidentally sent him to another world. It was hard for Yatanoel to believe this, but when he was convinced of the truth of what was said, he, putting his hand on the shoulder of his interlocutor, realizing that he was incredibly strong, offered him to become the head of this castle. Because they needed a strong leader. They simply needed a wise military leader capable of giving advice on defense. But the hero only remained silent in response. Despite this, Yatanoel suggested inspecting the castle, where, after some observations, the protagonist noticed that the rather old territory needed to be strengthened, repaired, and expanded. All this could be replaced with stone or at least increase the existing wood, but it would take time. Also, the demon thought that it would be nice to get a weapon. Interrupting his reasoning, the demon noticed that there was no one nearby when the slime that had settled on his head suggested that Yan now should be aware of all the nuances. He also said that the elder elf brother said that one of the seals was broken by itself, and also that he doubted whether a certain cane had anything to do with it or not. The demon thought about the Master of Innovations and whether he was okay, in response to which the slime said that he should have already returned to the village, and also conveyed his words that he was going to prepare a lot. After some thought, they decided to go to the queen. When a man stood in front of them, he greeted the demon, taking off his hat in front of him. He thanked him for his help on behalf of all the fort's fighters, complaining about the mess they were in. As a result of the fall of the fortress, the queen's sister passed away, and the goblin standing in front of the main character blamed himself for not being able to save the life of even one little girl. He was disappointed in himself because he had caused damage to many, but that was all he could do. The demon did not understand whether there was any sense in his actions, because he could not even take the place of the queen's sister, despite the fact that the goblin thought about how pathetic he was at his age, and that his speech might seem like nonsense. But he also knew that the girl had given the queen new life, and he could not ignore it. The man declared that he lived for the sake of death, and if the need arose to fulfill his duty, he would do it. After all, that was his path. He understood that he did not know how to say the right words at all, and noted that the queen was now very weak, because of which he wanted to ask his interlocutor about something. The goblin was going to give the girl a reason to live on. Then the demon king entered the queen's chambers. He noticed the empty look of the girl, the wounds on her body, the peeling scales. She was lying on the bed when that main character entered the room. The queen was in despair at this time. She was aware of her responsibilities and understood that now was not the time for depression. She knew that she had to be strong and that she needed to put their guards on the castle walls and also raise everyone's spirits. She was sure that even the recent incident was her fault because she could have controlled her subordinates better. Still blaming herself, she stood up abruptly and declared that she had to take responsibility and put in even more effort, knowing that she needed to take action. Looking at her guest, the queen, with tears in her eyes, desperately asked him where she should start. She did not know what to do without the support of her sister. The protagonist noticed that she was injured, suggesting that the girl was most likely extremely depressed. He said that he wanted to give her what was rightfully hers, while noting that her tired appearance was probably due to lack of sleep for several days. The queen could not see the thing that the demon was going to give her and asked to bring the crown, but the man handed her the bracelet, believing that there was no need for this, and only asked to keep this item. The girl, recognizing the bracelet by touch, burst into tears. After some time, the slime asked the protagonist to say something in this awkward situation. Then the demon turned to the queen and said that although he could not find words, he could only share her pain with her. So he promised to be by her side. And when, a moment later, the girl, taking the dagger, was about to commit suicide, the hero snatched the sharp object from her hands. And despite the girl's indignation, he remained calm, after which the queen, gradually calming down, hugged the demon. Noticing that she had fallen asleep, he put her back on the bed and covered her with a blanket. At that moment, the girl, touching his body, hugged one of his limbs, begging him to stay with her. To which the demon entrusted his tail into her arms. At this time, in the United Kingdom of Grafta and Western Tamalia, in a defensive tower, Vinkari, the Maiden of Sacred Waters, was indignant, not believing in some facts. She was sure that the Fire Lion's loss was a mistake. Because of the six saints, he was the strongest after his grandfather, especially in battles. But she was reassured by saying that he had lost, and that was a fact. And Fia von Triton, the sage's right-hand man, explained that they were trying to control the information to avoid disorder, but they would not be able to do so for long, and also added that the Holy King would take part in this matter. Vinkari understood that these were obvious things, because the six saints were not only powerful, but also were a symbol of the United Kingdom. They were the pillars of the countries, and the future of the kingdom depended on their every move. According to Enfia, confusion could spread even among the people. At this time, when the demon lord left the world, even the United Kingdom was not a monolith. Enfia said that the Holy King gave them special permission to deal with the situation, showing the dice on his palm. It was the kingdom's most closely guarded secret, the Seal of Spirits. Everyone understood that this was something that could change the balance of power between countries, including Jiria, the mistress of the motionless trees. She was sure that this weapon was only allowed in battles on the continents against the Demon King. But considering that the fall of the Six Saints could destroy the country, Enfia wanted urgent measures to be taken. So he gave Vinkari and Jiri the Spirit Seal, giving them the order to destroy. The mistress of the motionless trees was surprised by this, because the sage's right hand was more suited for war, and she was also sure that Vinkari would have said the same thing. But the man explained that national politics were involved in the actions of the Six Saints, and as the only elf among them, Jiria symbolized the alliance between elves and humans, which was simply an important political decision. Then, having accepted the outcome of events, the girl asked to be given an escort of knights with advanced or higher-level skills, to which the man could only agree. Watching from the street through the window of the meeting, one of the Six Saints, Kazodi of the Earthquake, sat on the roof. Although he was not interested in their games, he followed the events in which more than one of the Six Saints was involved. He thought that defeating the fiery lion that was able to point a sword at him was something outstanding and was interested in who would win this war. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud cry calling to him. The old man, sighing, went to the edge of the roof and, bending down, walked along the cornice upside down. Entering the field of vision of the boy who called him, he was very happy. But the old man sighed, because the boy probably did not even know his heritage. Some time later, where the crow feathers were falling from the sky, the head of the castle shouted, wondering where the main character was. Telling about his master, the skeleton pointed out that he was repairing the walls. As the chief approached the buildings under repair, the hero reminded him that completing the chief could affect those around him, condemning the commotion he was creating. But Yatnul explained that now was not the time for this. The people were coming with a huge army, and among them were two of the Six Saints. The leader assumed that they wanted to avenge the Fire Lion, but he had no idea what he should do. He noted that it was the former demon lord who had sown the seeds of discord, and demanded that he do something and not be drawn into all this anymore. Then Taraka, a goblin nicknamed the Bell Ringer, stopped him, explaining that this was too much because his master served the queen, and he had also heard that he had defeated the Fire Lion. The goblin also reminded if they had let him go, sooner or later the entire castle area would have been burned down along with its inhabitants. He spoke like a man, like one whose city had burned to the ground. Taraka pointed to the red and black scarf with which he had wiped away the blood of his comrades, whom he could no longer even see. He said the people had set up an outpost near his city and then attacked, and noted that while they were being destroyed, nothing happened in this castle. The old man was ready to pack his bags and leave if the head had any complaints. Then Yatanoel explained that he didn't mean that, and he just didn't know what to do. collapsing to the floor in despair. Slez noticed that they had some kind of argument, but explained that this would not help matters, and instead of looking for someone to blame, he suggested strengthening the fort by putting in maximum effort. A little later, the former demon lord wondered what he could do for this place. Sometime later, he approached the Raven, who had a question about whether he really needed to demonstrate his strength, to which the main character explained that if the leader doesn't go, then no one else will come either. The leaders of the tribes approached: the sandworm Vrina, Armas Harvey, the dead man Vida. Yatanuel asked why they had come, when they answered that they had heard the head of the castle screaming about war and wanted to clarify the reality of its threat. Raven was still trying not to acknowledge the fact of the impending war, but his doubts were interrupted by the protagonist, confirming their expectations, and asked which of them was capable of fighting. The chieftains explained that although there were a few soldiers who had returned from the Demon King's army somewhere, they were still few in number. Here they were just a bunch of demons, not an army. They were prepared for war, but it came too quickly. Knowing that the army of people was huge, the leaders were worried about what they would tell the children, and they assumed that first the leader would order them to gather the old men, women, and children, and order them to go into a battle that they knew they would lose, then go and lay down their lives in battle, noting that this would be very disgusting. One of the leaders lamented the lack of a leader like the Demon King, but the protagonist said that they would prepare for defense, not attack, and they would have a choice, while the leaders would be responsible for the evacuation. Sometime later in the square, the former demon lord and the castle leader looked at the crowd of children after waiting for men capable of fighting. Among the few demons were children and women. But even in the face of impending danger, one of those standing in the crowd came forward declaring that they had made a unanimous decision to enter the battle. He explained that some could fly fast, some were good at throwing stones, trying to prove their usefulness, desperately claiming that they were no worse than adults. But he was interrupted by someone in the middle of his fiery speech. The silhouette that interrupted the child's speech wanted to put forward another assumption. The speaker's voice seemed familiar to the hero, and he immediately recognized it, having jumped spectacularly from the ledge onto the stage. The man said that if they were going to recruit an army, children were completely unfit for it, and asked that it be left to the adults. The demon who arrived was the master of innovations Gimlet, whom they immediately recognized and were glad that he was in perfect order. While everyone except the slime and the main character did not understand who he was, the master of innovations announced that he had not arrived alone. Several times taller than the children, began to pass through the square. They asked the girls to go home because, as they claimed, war could be waged in different ways. The gathering included the Wolfwind clan from the caves in the north, the Zynelia clan from the Grell River in the south, and the Dogleven clan from the Frostmoon Valley. Gimlet announced that here were gathered those who could fight, proudly declaring that this was the best reinforcements of all he had ever seen. After thinking about this for a while, the former demon lord said that Gimlet had gone mad, because the enemy had a huge army of 10,000 people, and their leaders were two of the 6 saints, and this was far from a village meeting, but a real war. But, answering these words, he Dark Elf said that there was no difference, because if they wait, they will still get them, especially since they already had experience of defeat before. He said that if this place collapsed, they would be next, and he wasn't going to stand by and watch it. They also heard that their interlocutor had caused the pogrom at the human base, and even defeated one of the 6 saints. Gimlet said that rumors spread quickly, which is what brought this huge group of different races to the square. Each of them believed that they could succeed if they followed the hero's example and followed him. They were determined that if they were destined to lose, they wanted to do it a little sooner, and were also confident that if he went through with it, he could also become the Demon King. Slime, echoing the crowd, told him that he must answer for his words like a man. After a couple of seconds of reflection, the main character was surprised by the stupidity of the demons standing in front of him, but declared that if they wanted to lose so much, he was ready to show them real hell. In this hell, the enemy's arrows would fall like rain, and their swords would flash like a plane, their bodies would crumble, and their last fangs would break. Darkness blacker than night would descend upon them, but they would not suffer defeat and fall. Declaring that their bonds would be stronger than steel, the hero cursed the dawnless sky to become darker than the dawn. Sometime later, Gimlet appeared before the demon, praising him for his excellent speech, and was surprised at the changes that had occurred in his interlocutor in 3 days. But he could not say whether they were only external or whether they had also taken place internally. In fact, the master of innovation came to ask about something. He showed the pendant and explained that he got it from the flame that the former demon lord had brought with him earlier. After some manipulation, the pendant began to perform the magic of the queen possessed, and a little later, simply wrinkled, leaving Gimlet perplexed. He said that the thing was sealed in stages, and to break the seal, a lot of magic was needed, as well as a strong soul. In response to questions about the soul, the master only explained that the pendant was sealed with something serious, so that not everyone could use it. Gimlet also put forward his theory that the sealed thing was the power of the gods, and could have been located, for example, from the underground world of the Millennium. The most important thing, in his opinion, was the fact that the one who put this seal could have been him. But he suggested not to fill their heads with bad thoughts and think about it later, but for now to focus on the upcoming battle, for which they were ready to give their all. At this time, in one place, the slime, who said that the evacuation had begun. The protagonist, who knew that the queen was sad and left it to Karaku, and the head of the castle, who complained about the presence of both interlocutors, gathered. Each of them gave it their all and planned to continue doing so, no matter how fast their hearts were beating. Yatana well complained that he had not known before that the war would happen sooner or later, noting that it was much easier to fight when they all gathered together. He knew that he couldn't have prepared for all of this on his own, especially in the case of such a large-scale battle, even considering the reliability of the queen's demons. Thus, he thanked the hero for that. Hearing all this, the former demon lord finally understood why a demon like Yatanawell was made the head. At that moment, a strong vibration, accompanied by noise, passed through the earth. The hero guessed that an army of people was already advancing on them. Breaking trees, the soldiers and spirits called by the two saints advanced. The army approached the gates of the fortress, demonstrating its enormous numbers. On the backs of their spirits were Vinkari, the maiden of sacred waters, and Jiria, the mistress of motionless trees. The virgin of the sacred waters raised her hand upwards, standing astride a spirit in the form of a magical deer. She addressed the army, the brave men and women who had gathered in this place in the name of the goddess. She announced that they had finally come to an end to the suffering. The demons who occupy the old castle wanted to use it as a defense against the siege. The girl said that the castle was full of demons, because of which an ordinary person would have already run away, but not them. After all, those gathered here were proud warriors who stood up against the enemies, fans of the hero Vargas. The warriors rose up to avenge him. As she charged in the name of God, while the company of archers prepared to fire, she told the warriors not to worry, for only the blood of demons would be on their hands. At Vinkari's command, the rays released arrows, which, one after another, fell like rain on the fortress. One of the arrows flew towards the hero, but collided with some negative field and immediately burned to ashes. Each of the flying arrows turned to ashes, thanks to the great barrier that the dark elves erected. The Great Barrier was a set of fire barriers installed in different places. Moreover, it is possible to break through even one shield. Another example of use was the use of projectiles for offensive purposes, using ballistas and incendiary-coated projectiles. Thus, the shells, when passing through the barrier, caught fire, but did not burn out completely, reaching their opponent. At this moment, the demons' counterattack hit the human army in full force, causing irreparable damage. The fire also spread across the land, which the warrior commanders could not help but notice, as they marveled at the madness of the demons' attack. A little later, they actually noticed that the ground was soaked with something, but they could not understand when this happened, because only recently the ground was dry. A minute later, the ground began to split, causing soldiers to fall into one of the holes that appeared after the rift. In the darkness of the hole, the worms were waiting for the people, after which the position was completely lost. They made the obvious conclusion that the demon commander knew how to fight. The next order from the protagonist was for the worms to retreat and prepare the dancing line. After the trebuchet was prepared, the command was immediately given to continue the attack. A barrel was thrown towards the enemy, which was set on fire by the barrier in the process, and the flying fragments hit each warrior with pellets, and then the bombs exploded on the ground. The barrel shattered into a multitude of fragments of nails and scrap metal, sowing panic in the ranks of the enemy. One of the commanders tried to resolve the situation, but the shrapnel from the explosion hit many people due to the increased dispersion radius, and the low-class armor could not even stop them. As a result, rescuing the wounded reduced the number of their troops by half. The commander of the human army could not help but admit that the attack was effective and brutal, and there were not even any wounded on the demon side. Seeing the situation on the battlefield, Vinkari ordered everyone to retreat, intending to take care of it herself. She assumed that among the demons was the one who defeated Vargos. She was also sure that this was a good opportunity to test her strength. Then she ordered the summoned spirit to attack, whereupon it rushed forward with shouts. When the spirit struck the walls of the fortress with all its might, upon contact with the fire barrier, it evaporated a huge amount of water, creating a steam haze around it. Because of what the main character decided that they won in just one blow, decided that the six saints were just a bunch of monsters. But when the cloud descended, behind it was a huge water spirit, who only transformed and was not harmed in any way. And on his back, Vinkari was preparing an attack, having asked her opponent in advance not to lose from such a blow. Seeing the girl about to attack the castle, the main character said that he would throw her out of the castle and rush to attack. He also asked the remaining leaders to take care of the rest and announced to Vinkari that he would be her opponent in the near future. The castle chief and the slime, who were watching this, reacted differently. Raven panicked, but the slime said that he could leave what was happening to him. The next second, he gave orders to the Dark Elves to prepare a barrier, the archers to shoot at the enemies approaching the castle, and the orcs to prepare for close combat. At the same time, one of the six heroes and the demon clashed with each other in a fierce battle. The opponents exchanged dozens of attacks, after which, with one easy movement, the girl threw clots of water towards the main character and, finding herself on the back of the recognized spirit, began to fire at him with shells. At this time, the man could not understand where the water for her magic came from, because there were no rivers or underground water veins nearby. In fact, water was flowing towards the girl from the bushes and tree leaves, wrapping around her fingers and body. She noticed that with the sealed spirit, she could use much more power than what she possessed. Vinkari was even sure that she was not inferior to the hero of this world with his heroic skills. And remembering that Vargos was defeated, the balance of power of the six saints was disturbed, and it was up to her, the Maiden of the Holy Waters, to restore it. The girl sent huge waves of water to the demon, who could not help but curse at what was happening because she was not afraid to cause a tsunami even in the forest. Among other things, Vinkari summoned her spirit, which at that moment was pursuing the main character. And sometime later, the former demon lord had to face a second opponent, another summoned spirit, who was heading straight for him. After a strong blow directly to the place where the demon stood, the girl said that her opponent lacked precision. She was sure that he played, but decided to make sure of it, walking through the territory with the trees dried by her. While the girl was looking somewhere thoughtfully, the demon furiously attacked her from behind. But one of the six saints was able to defend herself from this, so the attack did not cause any damage. Vinkari concluded that her opponent was tougher than she thought, and when he retreated some distance, she decided to provoke him by asking if he planned to win by running away. She shared that she always wanted to have a castle, and decided to destroy the one the demons were based in after they finished their battle. The hero interrupted her remarks, concluding that she wanted to make peace by force and got straight to the point. At the same time, on the main battlefield, the orcs were fighting off attacks from the human army, while one of the demons was provoking the warriors to attack. Comparing the crowd of human troops to ants, he jumped into the air, falling straight into the crowd of enemies, which he created absolute chaos in. His relatives could not help but notice how he got into a frenzy, but they were not surprised because they knew that the demon was obsessed with battles, which was visible to the naked eye. At this moment, one of the orcs drew attention to an object nearby, drew everyone's attention to an object nearby. They didn't have time to notice how a large beanstalk grew in the middle of the battlefield, and it grew just as quickly. The demons didn't know what to do when the summoned Colossus of Jiri, one of the six saints, slammed his fist into the ground near where the stalk grew. Having uprooted the roots of the growing stem, he knocked it over while the demons did not know what to expect next, not believing that the spirit was going to hit them with this huge plant. But after a few seconds, the monster threw the stem with force towards the castle, crushing everything around it. Then one of the orcs, barely holding on to the wall, realized that it had been easily broken, opening a passage for enemy troops. At this time, in the forest, The Maiden of the Holy Waters noticed how Jiraiya did everything with a flourish, and, turning to the main character, said that they had already tried a lot, but offered to join the main battle. While attacking her opponent, she hoped that he would not run away, being confident that a good trophy would come out of his head. But the demon was against it, not wanting to lose. In the next moment, he allowed his limbs to grow spikes, attacking the enemy with sharp spikes of coals. As the thorns flew towards the girl, she noted that the name was very loud, after which they stopped in front of her face, not moving. She said that the skill didn't deserve its name, as all the spikes were stuck in her water defense, and she declared that her opponent was wasting his time by calling for him to surrender. In the following moments, the saint and the demon exchanged dozens of swift and aggressive attacks, after which numerous wounds remained on the protagonist's face. Vanquished said that her opponent turned out to be stronger than it seemed, which is why they were stuck here. The saint noted that not far from them was Jiraiya, tens of thousands of soldiers, as well as Vargas's former squad. The 3 Knights of Flame, who were an exception even among the strongest knights. All of them will definitely advance further after using the destroying tower and breaking the walls. Speaking about the detachment of 3 knights, the girl assumed that they should already be there. At this time, the detachment actually arrived at the settlement. According to them, the war was initially waged under the command of their master. That is why they had to take responsibility. Otherwise, they would not be able to look Vargas in the eye. They understood that if they did not hurry, 2 of the 6 saints would take all the glory for themselves. The knights were also sure that their castle leader had retreated into the depths of his possessions. Given the circumstances, they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity that had fallen to their lot. One of the knights ordered the others to find the leader and defeat him, wanting to show what the Knights of the Fire Lion were like. As they approached the castle, they noticed a man sitting on the bridge and told him that he had no business there, as there was a war raging against the demons all around. And if he wanted to gain glory in this place, he should leave. After the man remained silent, the knight sensed something was wrong, noticing that he was actually a demon himself, and also analyzed the situation. The gate looked like an extremely obvious object that was protected by a bridge, a typical defense measure, and the fact that it was not a suspension bridge showed people that it was not the ingenuity of demons. But Taraka, standing on the bridge to the gate, was not going to let them through, cutting off a piece of the bridge in front of them, being dissatisfied with their arrogance. Watching them float in the air with the help of magic, he said that they still wouldn't be able to pass through this place. The goblin argued that if they wanted to take the risk, they only had to take one step to become rust on his sword. The next moment they rushed into an attack with a cry, during which the opponents exchanged dozens of blows. One of them hit the demon right in the face, and with the next blow, one of the knights was going to finish the fight. But the demon jumped up and counterattacked the knight, knocking him down. The next second, he changed his grip on the sword, and not intending to let them pass, he swung it with force, demanding that they get out of the way. A few seconds later, he stood before them on the ground of Ashura with a broken stick in one hand and a rusty sword in the other. The goblin dreamed of a world to which there was no path, but instead he promised to guide his opponents on their way to the abyss. At this time, the human and demon armies clashed in a fierce battle. Slime, who took charge of the situation, ordered his subordinates to guard the entrance and protect it at all costs. He understood that if the positions were not maintained, the enemy would break through and they would flood in huge numbers. Giants of enormous size began to emerge from the gates. The demons fighting on the battlefield could not help but curse at the situation. There were many enemies, and they could not push them back. The giants, noticing such a deplorable situation, decided that it was their turn. Saying that it was time for them to repay the queen for her kindness, they moved towards the battlefield. Every demon was surprised to see them, calling for them to stop, as the giant's size made them a good target. But they were firmly convinced of their decision, and only asked to be used as a human shield. The giants also remarked that their bodies would make a good wall. Entering the battle, they decided to give their best in this big show. But immediately there followed an attack of a huge number of arrows, which seemed like rain. And even covering themselves with huge logs from the attack, the giants could not fully protect themselves. Their furious attack was destructive and effective, striking down crowds of enemies, among whom there was even a daredevil who jumped on the enemies, with his sword at the ready, and wounded the palm of one of them, but was himself caught and mercilessly defeated. When the last of the giants fell, the soldiers announced the capture of the northwestern hill, the southeastern tower, the northeastern bridge, and the destruction of enemy troops at the city walls. By declaring the turning point of the war the breach of the city gates, they declared the end of this battle. All that was left for them to do was to go straight to the main battlefield, and the commander urged his soldiers to follow him into the attack. Suddenly, they were blown away by some spell. The only one who remained on his feet, the commander, was in a stupor, noticing that the magic that hit them belonged to the Maiden of the Holy Waters. At that moment, a voice came from afar, which reported about the retreat and general assembly in the camp. While one of the commanders could not understand the reason for such orders, because they had almost won. But the explanation came immediately. The point was that the entire territory of the camp was in the window. It was necessary to start extinguishing the fire immediately. At the same time, Vankari was suffering from severe shortness of breath, falling to the ground as the protagonist mocked the fact that she was still breathing at all. The demon had no intention of letting the woman recover, and once again attacked her with thorns. Even in such a terrible state, the saint could still defend herself from them by putting up a water defense. But the hero did not stop suppressing her with swift attacks. He reminded them that they should have destroyed it quickly, otherwise everything around would have turned to ashes. The demon explained that her source of water was wood, which would dry out sooner or later, and dry wood served as good fuel for fire. He also asked Vankari if she had ever thought about how many trees she had already dried to become firewood for his fire. Now even the slightest spark of fire could burn everything to the ground, including food for the army of people. The army was numerous. Food was a very important resource. He added that an army without supplies was just a group of refugees. The protagonist gave her a choice: to save the army or make refugees out of them. In the best case, Vankari could risk her life to put out the fire. But smirking, the demon said that he did not really approve of such firefighting. At the same time, on the side of the gate to the royal chambers, a goblin, risking his life, fought off the 3 Knights of Flame. Despite being 1 against 3, the demon effectively fought off the onslaught of his opponents. Those who were the elite of the elite could not cope with just a goblin, which surprised them very much. Even a knight named Zaire, who possessed monstrous strength, could not defeat him. The enemies simply could not hit him, recognizing that the monster standing before them was an incredibly strong opponent, and not one that could be defeated without some casualties. Zaire, confidently looking his enemy in the eye, decided that if he did not risk his life, he would not see victory. Therefore, using a powerful magic spell, he told his subordinate Guillermo that he would act alone from now on, and asked him to rebuild their squad at home. Now he had to leave them, but he said that even if his body left life, the soul would go to the fiery lion as atonement. Despite Guillermo's slight stupor, Zaire said that he would leave everything to him at the moment when he activated a huge force and struck Karaka with a strong swing. The blow from the maces knocked the goblin aside, throwing him back to the very gates that he had so carefully guarded. The next second, the demon, leaning on a sword stuck in the ground, heard from his opponent that he was driven into a corner. The knight, with this in mind, was going to make every effort to win the battle in which he had gained an advantage, while mocking his opponent, assuming that he was already ready to surrender. Guillermo, who was standing nearby at the time, assumed that the atonement skill that Zaire used would not be able to solve the problem, despite the fact that manipulating the blood flow and accelerating life processes could strengthen it. This technique brought physical abilities to the very limit. But besides everything else, it was originally assumed that the effect would be short-lived. Although the strength continued to increase even after short-term use, the strain on the body was also enormous and reached lethal levels. Swinging 2 maces with great force, Zaire struck his opponent and continued to make a series of attacks. Under the overwhelming pressure, the goblin was literally pressed into the ground. He was pushed back more and more, and at some point he found himself completely pressed against the doors. With his last breath, with blood at his mouth, he made a final powerful attack, during which the gates to the queen's chambers were broken. After Zaire's victory, Guillermo approached him, rejoicing at his victory. But he immediately noticed that he had blood flowing from his mouth, and the knight himself later collapsed unconscious. Guillermo's suspicion that the strain on the circulatory system might be too great was confirmed, but when he examined the body more closely, he noticed 2 brushes in the neck. He could only assume that the monster had abandoned them so quickly that no one had even noticed. The goblin had won, the queen happily announced, but later she noticed that Taraka was lying motionless and began to blame herself once again for his loss. She couldn't understand why they couldn't just leave her alone, and she remembered her sister in tears because of her helplessness. Guillermo, not wanting to look at his enemy's tears, raised his sword to attack the defenseless queen, but was interrupted by the awakened goblin, who carried out a lightning attack. The knight was seriously wounded in the neck and desperately decided that he could make one last contribution. Taraka was late in noticing that the knight's target was not him, but the queen, when the sword attack was carried out. At the same time, in the center of the burning forest stood Vinkari and a demon watching her, who said that she was tenacious, remembering that she was one of the 6 saints. The girl realized that she had made a serious mistake, because the sealed spirit she was using was too strong, so much so that she could not think clearly due to ignoring the accumulated experience. Finally, the girl understood the meaning of the old man's mockery of her when he called her a toy of God, because the weapon she used was actually using her. The girl thought about how ironic it was that nothing but this device could solve the problem that had arisen, because she still remained at a disadvantage. Vinkari reasoned that the majority of the army had not perished only because they had fought the fire, and assumed that the wizards would soon join them, and the fire would be extinguished, and then further reinforcements could be expected. The Virgin of the Holy Waters came to the obvious conclusion that if they bought enough time, they could eventually win. It was this thought of hers that the protagonist voiced out loud. Despite the girl's surprise, he decided to describe everything to her as it really was. All this time, the demon thought that they would have a hard time, but he never thought that they would be able to cope with people one by one. When one of the 6 saints went on the offensive, he assumed that it would be as strong as Vargos. Hearing this, the girl suggested that the saint was struck down by the demon standing before her. In response, the former demon lord said that she would be the second of them to fall by his hand. Having realized this, the girl understood that the previous idea of prolonging the conversation in order to gain time made no sense, because her opponent already knew her goals, after which the demon revealed that his original goal was to defeat one of the saints first, and to catch her partner off guard while the chaos on the battlefield had not died down. That was his plan. So, not wanting to waste any more time on her opponent, the demon said that she could be proud of herself, because she made him show her secret trump card. The next moment, he wrapped his limbs in a huge bud, which the Maiden of Holy Waters greatly underestimated, not understanding how her opponent was going to attack her at all. The next second, she felt a strong tremor, despite the fact that she was one of the saints, and a short moment later, she saw how the bud opened leaf by leaf, releasing a huge amount of energy. The girl could not even imagine what awaited her next, when a huge knight with a long, round sword appeared from the bud. Looking down at Vinkari from a height several dozen times her own, she announced that from that moment on the battle was drawing to a close, declaring the end of their battle. The demon said that out of respect for one of the 6 saints, he would give it his all and go as far as possible. Vinkari was completely thrown off balance, not understanding how she could win in a situation. She noticed that her breathing was ragged, and her whole body seemed to be screaming that she needed to run. The girl said that she had hoped for a great battle, while realizing that she would be defeated by the monster, even though she would meet her end as one of the 6 saints, the Virgin of the Holy Waters. But the demon, without giving her a chance, said that everything was already over, after which Vinkari discovered a serious wound that she could not even keep track of. The former demon lord had no intention of playing games with her, and besides, he had to leave the fortress for a long time. He knew that it was time for him to return. Already heading towards the main battlefield, he noticed something. Despite her wounds, one of the 6 saints did not retreat, saying that no matter who was in front of her, she could not lose so easily. Her body began to turn into water when she used the spirit seal, which absorbed life, but in return gave incredible power, allowing the use of forbidden techniques. In response, the protagonist only silently slashed at her with a magic blade, unleashing a massive magical attack. Continuing to talk about her current capabilities, Vinkari avoided the attack, because her body now consisted entirely of water. But the demon immediately found a weakness in this technique, pointing out that it was a bad decision, because the water could always be evaporated. The protagonist attacked the girl, grabbing her with one hand, explaining that if he couldn't cut her, he could still heat her up so much that she wouldn't be able to escape her fate. Vinkari, unable to escape capture, realized that despite her fate, too much depended on her life. The girl knew that her opponent probably couldn't maintain his form long enough, otherwise he could use her at the very beginning. And she declared that she was ready at any cost to gain at least a little time. She was not going to give up even if it meant delaying the enemy for just a second, demanding that they not underestimate her. Because she was not so simple that they would ignore her, she stated that the demon would not be able to defeat the six saints without losses, and she, the Maiden of Sacred Waters, being the protector of the country and the sword of the king, would never retreat. Some time later, all that was left of the girl was heavy rain and regret for her arrogance, and request for forgiveness from her partner Jiraiya. At this time, the second of the six saints realized that this rain could only be created by Vanquished using the divine-level spell, Tears of Saints, which is created in exchange for the caster's life. But her reasoning was interrupted by human cries. The soldiers were tired from the battle, more psychologically. They were sure that they were promised something completely different, namely the cleansing of minor demons after the departure of their king, and that it would be even easier, because people from the six saints were supposed to fight side by side with them, went into battle believing that no one would die, and that all who went would return home. But it all turned out to be a lie, and their comrades in arms were wasting their lives. Even the food was burning without Vinkari, in addition to the lack of water. They turned to the summoned Colossus Jiraiya, who stood atop the throne, begging to let them go home. Even one of the commanders explained that everyone was shocked by the defeat of the Maiden of the Holy Waters, which was a serious shock for them. The commander also added that it was only a matter of time before the soldiers would ignore orders and run away, and only asked to show them the power of one of the six saints to raise the general fighting spirit. The girl then directed a vine of plants at one of the soldiers, which began to wrap around him, while the defenseless man did not know what was happening to him. Jiraiya decided that the soldiers would be more useful this way. A few moments later, the man turned into a wooden golem, growling something incoherent. This was a forbidden technique of sacrifice, which not only the soldiers but also their commander were taken aback by. He was indignant that there was no need to use this technique, but the girl did not understand why he felt safe, and mocking him, she used the sacrifice on him in turn. While the commander, not believing what was happening to him, fell from the Colossus, Jiraiya only realized how useless all these soldiers were to her, and was also indignant that her partner's loss had ruined her life. Thinking about what she would have to tell the Holy King about such losses upon her return, she decided that she would pretend to be a victim, showing that she had fought with all her might. Despite her irritation, the girl, sitting cross-legged, was still pleased at least that the remaining obstacles had been removed. Sometime after the transformation of the human army into wooden golems, and also after the destruction of the main gates of the castle, in the queen's chambers, Guillermo struck with his attack a goblin who had protected the girl from danger. The queen, watching this picture, could not believe what happened before her, when the knight realized that even the demons fought to the very end. The knight, realizing his defeat, only asked Vargas for forgiveness, going to him. The goblin, with blood dripping from his mouth, pulled out the sword sticking out of his body and threw it to the floor. He breathed heavily and covered the wound on his chest as the queen once again blamed herself. But Taraka, not wanting to hear this, brought the girl to her senses and told her about how her sister had endured terrible trials, covered in wounds. But even in that situation, she endured everything and did not give up until the very end. The goblin pointed out to the queen what her sister might think of her if she saw her in such a state. Taraka explained that her sister was alive as long as the memories of her were alive in the girl's heart. And he made it clear that the queen had to decide for herself how she should live on. Raising his voice, he urged the girl, even if she had to crawl in the mud and gnaw on tree roots, to live for her sister. As he left the room, he was sure that each of them would still have to meet the queen's sister, but at the moment, they all needed the girl's help. And although the goblin knew that he was probably asking too much, he still asked her to fight until the very end, because losing while lying in bed must be very offensive. Reasoning that everything that had happened was more like a simple series of failures, he added that he did not know what words to say for support, and only once again asked the queen never to give up. According to Taraka, all storms always ended, but after them, there was only blue sky. The goblin also said that it was raining outside, which is why he went to get an umbrella. Walking through the streets of the settlement, the demon could not help but think about the nature of the rain, which seemed strange to him, because every time he took a step under it, he lost strength, and his legs seemed to be burning. Taraka decided that this was a terrible curse, which was more appropriate than ever for the flowers of death to bloom. The goblin, confidently setting himself the goal of defeating one of the six saints at the end, was ready to play big and make some noise. At that moment, a wooden golem fell from the sky on him, which the demon easily dodged, but was surprised by this event, assuming that the creature was not an ally. Having decided to find out the reason for what was happening, Taraka approached the wall of the fortress and could not believe what he saw at that moment. Before the goblin's eyes, a fierce battle opened up between the main character and the golems, which, among other things, he effectively defeated. But another monster approached him from behind, ready to attack, when he was struck down by the slime. Standing behind the hero was a tree-like knight with a sword and shield, wanting to cover him from behind. His partner's appearance seemed unusual to him, but he only said that when the attacks by people stopped, he became curious and went outside. At that moment, it was raining, when suddenly wooden monsters appeared, because of which he decided to hide first. Using his skill, he turned the wooden soldier that the human commander had once been turned into a puppet, and then saw the former demon king appear on the battlefield. The following events were already familiar to the demon. The protagonist spoke about the black cloak made of molten steel, which was his trump card, the only drawbacks of which were the lengthy combat, because the spell could end at the wrong time. One of the six saints, behind them on top of her colossus, decided that these were unusual monsters. Her attention was especially drawn to the Black Knight, because it was he who defeated the Fire Lion and the Virgin of the Holy Waters. She also noticed that he imitated the Fire Lion and even took his appearance, and the strength of the demon himself surpassed the original, which could not help but disappoint the girl. Jiraiya was debating whether she should release the spirit when Taraka joined the two demons' company. The old man was wounded, which the hero mentioned, but the goblin just waved it off by saying that it was just a scratch, and thanking him for his worries, asked how they were going to break through the army that had turned into spirits. But the former demon lord was sure that most of the golems were not much of a problem, because the main goal was to get to one of the six saints, because if they did not move carefully, they could be crushed by the colossus. He realized that he needed to get to the girl as soon as possible, before she decided to take matters seriously. Then the goblin wanted to suggest some plan, but they were interrupted by the slime, who single-handedly held back the onslaught of the wooden golems. When the protagonist suggested having fun, the slime happily agreed with him, until the goblin told him something. The strangeness of the new movements could not go unnoticed by Jiraiya, and while she was wondering what her enemies were planning, the protagonist activated chaos magic. Directing it with the huge blade, he used the Ash Greatsword technique, dealing a huge blow to the area, hitting hundreds of opponents. After the attack, the girl noticed that not only the main character but also the goblin and the wooden soldier were moving in her direction, which surprised her greatly, because Taraka was the weakest of the three. The slime promised to take care of the enemies approaching from behind, covering the goblin who was quickly running towards the target, allowing him to safely move forward without worrying about danger. Analyzing the situation, Jiri noticed how the wooden soldier protected the demon and was sure that the goblin was going to do something against her. When suddenly she noticed something. She remembered that the golems had one weak point. Their large size did not allow them to maneuver easily, which is why they had many blind spots, which made it easy to hide from sight. The saint suggested that the demons had decided to use the goblin to lure the golems into obstacle traps by exploiting blind spots. At the same time, the wooden soldier provoked the enemies, thus making himself a bait, towards which the golems, having lost sight of Taraka, moved. The girl was even surprised that her golems lost the goblin so quickly, but she also realized how smart her opponents were, and only then understood why her partner, one of the six saints, lost. At that very moment, the goblin, clenching the hilt of the sword in his teeth, broke through the crowd of monsters, and with one light leap, jumped onto the colossus, screaming as he climbed higher and higher to the point where Jiraiya was located. And then he jumped on her, intending to attack. But the girl was offended, and using the vines of the plants with a light movement, pierced the body of the attacker. As the goblin fell to the ground, she said that no matter how strong he was still just a goblin and could not defeat her. But at that moment, the main character suddenly attacked her, swinging his huge round sword. The girl, seeing the sudden attack, hastened to defend herself from the huge sword with the help of plants. Laughing, she was surprised at how the demon had managed to escape her observation. But she declared that their plan was ruined, not believing that they had tried to defeat her in one blow. After a couple of attacks, the girl realized that her opponent could actually defeat her, since wood magic was weak against fire magic. Thus, a worse opponent for her could not be imagined. But she noticed that on her side there was a torrential rain. It was Tears of the Saints, a skill her partner had spent her life learning. Jiraiya explained that holy water could not only extinguish fire, but was also poisonous to demons, and was also capable of growing strong trees. Remembering that she didn't really want to work with one of the 6 saints together, considering her too weak for her level, the girl still decided that her loss had at least made some difference. But the protagonist said that it didn't matter what they used against him. It wouldn't change what he was going to do. He was about to defeat the saint right there and then, but the girl interrupted him, pointing out that his time was up. At that moment, a huge fist of a colossus flew at the hero from the side, which the demon did not expect at all, and for which he was thrown far to the side and fell, crumbling the earth around him. A wooden puppet quickly ran to the place where the man had fallen. The slime was worried about his condition when the demon cursed angrily, hitting the ground with his fist. He regretted that Taraki's loss had been in vain, and now they wouldn't even be able to catch her off guard. Besides, she was now more vigilant, and although they could try to reach her refuge, it would be very difficult for them without the goblin. The girl sank to the floor, realizing that if the demon had been even a second faster, she would have already lost. But gathering her strength, she decided that she was not going to wait and watch them. She needed to be faster than them in order to destroy them before they did anything. Jiraiya thought about using the wooden golems as a sacrifice. The next thing the girl did was use the spirit release skill. She addressed the colossus, calling upon the Tree King, the snake dragon, and commanded the spirit to eat. The next moment, he began to rapidly absorb the wooden golems located around him. This left the slime and the protagonist puzzled, who suggested that it could have been some kind of trick, and they, without a backup plan, had to be prepared for anything. The demon understood that they had to give it their all, and was ready to give his body to the power of the blade of his sword. At the same time, the screams coming from the enemy's side made the slime think that something was already being prepared there. At that moment, the colossus from which more and more plants were sprouting screamed louder and louder, while the girl, despite the strong energy consumption, was confident that, having sacrificed such a number of golems, everything would go successfully. It was her most powerful spell, causing the slime to doubt the possibility of what was happening before his eyes. The colossus transformed into a completely different creature, rapidly approaching them. The great dragon looked down on the demons from the height of his enormous stature. But the former lord of demons was not afraid of what he saw, provoking the enemy to approach him. The man sharpened his sword, and when the dragon rushed to attack, he threw the magic prepared on the sword at its huge body. The strength of the demon's attack surprised one of the 6 saints. While he continued the fight, he noticed that the real strength of the dragon in front of him was in regeneration and variability. The monster's outer shell was stronger than steel, and no matter how much it was destroyed, the dragon could recover and was even able to regrow lost limbs, and the more it was destroyed, the stronger it became. Even as he ate more and more creatures, all of his abilities became stronger, so the number of golems he had eaten exceeded 10,000, and he now possessed all of the qualities that any dragon would have in full. Addressing the main character and the slime puppet standing nearby, Jiraiya noted that now, in this place, even the bravest heroes did not want to deal with the dragon. But the saint was not going to lose her vigilance and ordered the dragon to crush her opponents. The ensuing attack hit the protagonist, knocking him out of his sword and pinning him motionless to the ground. The slime immediately rushed to his aid, wanting to save its comrade, but his sword strike not only had no effect but also broke the weapon, leaving the wooden puppet in despair from the strength of the dragon's body. Cursing at the situation, the slime tried to kick the dragon's paw off his partner's body, but after a few attacks his leg was damaged. Lamenting how fragile his body was, the slime suggested that the hero transform into a smaller form, to which he replied that he had already tried to do so for some time, but could not reverse the transformation due to some kind of limiter. Slime desperately tried to save his comrade with his fists, not wanting him to lose. He went through all sorts of options, but could not even call anyone for help. Turning to the former demon lord, the slime reminded him that he had already used the return to life and that his soul would not survive a second reincarnation. The demon did not want to let his partner leave this world, because even if he didn't care, he was still needed by the rest of the inhabitants of the settlement, and he beat his fists on the dragon, hoping for a miracle. After some time, the slime, like the saint who was watching the fight, realized that this was the end. But when Jiraiya decided to look at the enemy's body, she discovered that there was no one under the dragon's paw. The main character and his partner had disappeared. Slime recognized the teleportation magic, but did not understand who performed it. Assuming that the one who used the magic was the former demon lord, he, not understanding why he did not use it earlier, felt relieved. But the hero said that it was far from him, explaining that the thorns prevented him from casting spells, and, besides everything else, teleportation magic was the highest field of magic. Not understanding who was actually using teleportation then, he looked back at the silhouette behind him. It was the queen who put on the crown. She said that it was she who should have been made guilty, and, moreover, even deprived of the right to be queen. The girl wanted to be abandoned, but not only was no one blaming her, but they also said that running away was completely normal, and even those who had already left this mortal world still extolled her. Then she finally realized that she would exchange her life, but would not allow any of the demons to leave for a better world. The girl knew that it was already too late, but she also wanted to fight, confidently declaring her firm intentions. The queen apologized to the demon lying on the ground for the fact that it took her so long to understand everything, but the man only reached down and stroked her head. He was glad that she was okay. The girl thanked him for his concern, pointing out that he should not have time to worry about others. The queen noticed that both demons who arrived were in bad shape, and without listening to the slime's words that he was just a puppet, she said that she would fix everything. She used the night moon's magic. In the process, her hair grew a lot, and everything around her body sparkled. The girl summoned healing butterflies of moonlight and sent them with a simple breath onto the demons' bodies. With one touch, the butterflies covered the wounded areas of the body with pollen, completely healing them. The protagonist found it similar to the grave of the fireflies, but the slime found this picture terrifying. After which he asked the queen why she grew her hair, to which she replied that this happens when you cast real magic. The demon felt much better, which is why he couldn't help but praise the girl's increased magical power compared to what it was before. But she considered this to be the norm, and explained that magic was the art of the mind. Then, after thinking for a bit, the former demon lord asked if the queen could enhance magic. But, according to her, even he could do such a basic spell, and asked why he needed magic, answering to which, the main character was confident of victory in this battle. Upon receiving the enhancement, at least they would have a chance. While the girl was clarifying the specific task, at the same time, a little further from their location, Jiraiya was raging, unable to find where the escaped demons were hiding. One of the 6 saints could not find them even by searching with a search spell. But after thinking about it for a while, she assumed that they were simply not in the forest. Therefore, they were somewhere where there was not even a hint of any vegetation. Jiraiya remembered the scorched earth was near the castle or even in the castle itself, which led her to think about the possible existence of a wizard, whom they hid in advance for the escape, so that he would teleport them to himself. The very thought of it infuriated the girl, but she also wondered if there were any more people left in the castle, and decided to go there just in case, when something caught her attention. A blinding beam of light burst forth from the center of the castle, which represented a huge amount of unusual magical power, and the saint could only guess what would happen next. Then she noticed the silhouette of a man on the wall of the settlement, but looking a little closer, she recognized the figures of 2 demons who had previously escaped defeat at the clutches of the dragon. At this moment, the queen was worried about the condition of the main character, because he could simply be torn apart from the amount of magic that she poured into him. But the demon asked her not to worry about it because it was his problem, and he asked the girl not to bother her head with such things, and just provide him with the necessary magic. Despite everything else, the queen still doubted, because from that amount of high-level magic, one could even simply go blind. Any other demon in his place would have already reached any conceivable limit, but not him. At least that's what it seemed to her, which made her admire how incredible the man standing in front of her was. But suddenly, the main character praised the queen, saying that she was amazing, because she managed to raise him from the brink of death to a state in which he was many times stronger than before, in a very short period of time. The demon praised her healing skills, calling the girl the Queen of Healing, but the girl brushed it off because for her it was just a trifle. But the slime interrupted their conversation because it had been too little time since their meeting for them to start flirting. In another case, he suggested that the former demon lord was considering the queen as a potential bride. While the girl was embarrassed to the point that her face turned red, the demon said with regret that he had no reproductive organs. But in the opinion of the slime, all this was unimportant. These conversations led the queen into even greater embarrassment. The main character asked about what the slime wanted him to tell the girl that she would become his wife after the war. And he, confirming, decided that it was an excellent oath before the end of life. Slime noticed that Jiraiya was already approaching them, and turning to his partner, called him the Sorcerer King, and prepared for battle. The demon got into a fighting stance, starting another battle and threw the blade upward with force, jumping for the abandoned weapon. The protagonist called on his comrades to try their best, because he was counting on them. Jiraiya noticed the flying blade, and seeing that one of the demons was flying after it, she only assumed that he had decided to ignore her, and she was glad about this, because he was the most dangerous of them all. Even considering the trap option, one of the 6 saints had a long-range attack, so she decided to switch to the remaining 2 first. But her intentions were suddenly interrupted by a sharp cry coming from above, which surprised everyone who was on the battlefield at that moment. Jiri assumed that he rose above the clouds and could not believe that he was probably going to change the weather. But after a couple of seconds, she realized the demon was going to get rid of the rain of tears of saints. But the girl was sure that it was already too late, because the Tree King, the snake dragon, had absorbed enough holy water, and the demon's actions would not have changed anything. The dragon, at the saint's command, rushed to attack and struck with its tail, but crashed into a barrier that did not allow any of the attacks to pass. One of the 6 saints noticed the Dark Elf's fire barrier, which was not only repaired but also strengthened even more than before. The girl realized that using her tail as an attack wasn't the best solution, but she could still just attack head-on, resenting the fact that she was the one who had to destroy the elven fire barrier. She felt far from her best. While the dragon was building up the atmosphere around him, the queen also strengthened the wooden slime puppet, letting him know that she could control magic quite well. The girl prepared herself for the battle, because it was the 2 of them who were going to destroy the 6 saints. At that moment, a dragon was attacking them, when pieces of metal began to fall from the sky onto Jiraiya's head. Immediately after the small particles, a fragment of the demon's black armor fell to the ground next to her, after which the saint decided to raise her head up, wanting to find out where all this fell from. But at the top, an unimaginable picture awaited her. The main character had transformed, and having significantly increased in size, was falling on the battlefield. He managed to intercept the dragon's paw in the air and throw it away, landing heavily on the ground. While the dragon was thrown on its back, the hero concluded that its bones were in every way stronger than the dragon's, and therefore, only victory awaited their side. Illuminated by the sun's rays, he confidently decided to deal with one of the 6 saints. Slime, seeing his partner who had reached such abnormal sizes, inquired about the demon's condition, since even not so long ago at the base he was smaller. But he said that this body had some limitations, and asked the wooden puppet with the queen on its shoulder to hold on tighter. Despite the limitations, the demon could still fight, even better than he could before. Jiraiya could not understand who the main character really was, because dragons were the strongest in the world, so much so that they could easily subjugate the entire world. And the dragon she summoned was a king with the strongest body among the other representatives. But even with this in mind, the demon managed to counterattack the dragon. The saint assumed that her opponent was a descendant of demons, cursing the hero of this world for his unfinished work. The girl understood that she could not sit back and look down on everyone, and realizing that there was no turning back, she was determined to defeat each of her enemies. The next moment, the dragon, taking a deep breath, screamed with such force that even the queen and the slime could barely stay on top of their ally. But in response to this gesture, the former demon lord opened his mouth on his stomach with an equally loud scream, stunning Jiraiya. And the next thing the demon did was tear off the dragon's wing, because he knew that one of the 6 saints was against them. So the whole situation was not in their favor. But the hero knew that she hated fighting in the vanguard, and her strength directly depended on her pawns. The demon understood that Jiraiya was squeezing the maximum benefit out of her subordinates, and her abilities were aimed at support, while the slime with the queen rushed to the location of their last enemy. The saint knew she had no time for those who invaded her fortress, but the attackers knew she was good at close combat. Slime summed up that without the dragon she was on her own, wondering if she could cope with the onslaught alone. Jiraiya recognized the magic used as the power of the eye, a star blade she had never seen before. At this point, the slime announced that this was all just a game that they were going to win. One of the 6 saints realized that they were trying to separate her from the dragon, and realizing that she was being underestimated once again, she decided that she could cope without him, preparing the stems of the bushes in her hands. She had been on the brink of death hundreds of times, and nothing special happened this time, because once again she was dealing only with herself. Jiraiya was glad that everything became better after she followed Lord God. At that moment, the hero struck the dragon's limbs with his tail, almost completely hitting them. After all this, the demon forcefully pulled the huge enemy towards himself and grabbed him by the wings, and then used chaos magic, the skill of the ash tree, on the dragon, who lay helplessly on the ground, from all sides. But after a couple of minutes, there was no trace of the wounds, and the thorns fell from the monster's body. The protagonist realized that the dragon's true strength lay in its ability to regenerate, and thought that it was already accustomed to fighting the same opponents over and over again. But this time the hero wanted to know how long the dragon could last like this.